Yo, 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 it's ODB from OLP. Thanks for coming back every single week, every other week. However often you come back and rock with us, I certainly appreciate it. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's where I'm going to continue the bulk of the content for OLP. The podcast, as of now, will continue to remain available on the normal podcast platforms, but you get a much richer experience, is the best way I can explain it, when you consume the content via YouTube. I want to thank everyone for the continued support. This is episode 383 of OLP. I did make a mistake. I think I got confused. That doesn't happen very often, or rather, maybe it does every day. But on the last episode, I think I went back and forth when I was pulling it together, and I believe I said 382. I think I said 383. But let the record show, this is episode 383. So again, thanks for so many of you that have been with us since day one. We really appreciate it. On this episode, the episode overview, we're going to have Mike Sclimenti. I believe I'm saying it right. Mike's he'll laugh if I'm not, but AKA Sclem, AKA, will the real Sclimenti please stand up? Say that 10 times fast, right? One of the OGs in our scene from Xtreme Lowz. Let's not forget Xtreme Lowz. They've been around 30 plus now. They celebrated their 30th and they're doing the damn thing. So it's really cool to link up with another Xtreme Lowz member. And how awesome is that? The episode overview is brought to you by Hammered Weekend Wear. We're going to be at MiniNat soon. There's so many events nationwide. Hammered Weekend Wear is there, and they've got your back. Stickers, shirts, hats, skate decks, banners, you name it. If there's one of the best partners out there that we have, it's Hammered Weekend Wear, or HAMMERD. You said it. Weekendwear.com. As we get into this episode, I got to stop for a moment and give a huge shout out to our title sponsor, Scrapin' the Coast. I often tell you it's SCRAPIN, thecoast.com. This event is in the Mini Truck Hall of Fame, and it is every year. So it is annually, and it's June 20th through the 22nd of 2025 in Biloxi. So we hope to see you out there. OLP will be there. One of the differentiating factors of this amazing, again, Mini Truck Hall of Fame event is there is indoors. So you could go soak up some of that, what we jokingly say, which is a Papa Smurf-ism, that Freon poisoning. I haven't talked about that in a while, but that's certainly what it is, and we love it. We would never condone any illegal activities with Freon, but certainly going in the AC is, as Kyle Fan and our big homie K-Dog would say, legal. Certainly legal, right? So episode overview, again, Sclem is going to be here, and thanks to Hammered Weekend Wear. The breaking news, I am working on another episode that's going to come out early next week. So if you're a day one or weekend one listener, just know that I'm working on a mini Nats episode. Those seem to do really well. People like to consume a little bit, not as heavy as content, but more along those top 10 type things that you need to know about an event. But one thing I will tell you is our friends over at Switch Suspension, they've got an amazing YouTube channel. Everything they're doing with their social media is just fantastic. We've seen those guys grow like no tomorrow. But if you go by their booth at MiniNats, there's going to be more details, and I'll try to get a little bit more details on it. But they're going to be giving away a mini truck, Toyota pickup. So there's going to be more on that. So I want to give a huge shout out to Switch Suspension. Good people. Believe it or not, although we are not an official partner with them, we don't work closely with them, they do offer free shipping on most products on their website, which is fantastic. So big ups to the kinfolk, if they happen to hear it, Seth and the entire team over there at Switch Suspension. The breaking news brought to you by Lone Star Throwdown, of course, one of our favorite shows every February, if you will, in Conroe, Texas. We love it. We were there this year, and it doesn't matter what the weather is. Sure, Texas weather is bipolar. We understand that, as is Florida, but we always have a good time. Join us every year in Conroe, Texas. That's an event that OLP will not miss, and there's good kinfolk out there. The general updates. This one's pretty quick, but listen, I just had a great conversation with someone earlier today. What I would tell you is get out there, and I've said this before, live your dreams, do the things you want to do, set those goals. If there's a place you want to go, if it's SEMA, if it's a country, if it's a place in the US, if it's a bike you want to buy, I mean, set those goals, man. You can achieve those. And I know sometimes you get up, it's the daily grind. Maybe you don't like what you're doing for your day-to-day, job and things like that. Things come up in life, right? Illnesses, diseases, all kinds of crazy stuff, right? Family members that are passing away. Life is not easy. We all know that. But I certainly want to encourage people, and I try to always do that, especially through the podcast. When I was younger, I remember being in like 9th or 10th grade and having a motivational speaker come into one of our classes. And this guy, it really resonated with me, a lot of the things that he said. And I still remember that day. And I always thought maybe as I got a little bit older, maybe I would become a motivational speaker. Who knows? But I've learned as I've got older, you can do anything you want to do. We learned from George McFly. He famously said, if you put your mind to it, you can what? Yeah, you said it, accomplish anything. So get out there and live your dreams and do what you want to do. The general updates is brought to you by Southeast MiniTruckin Nationals, aka Mini Nats. We're going to be there in about a week, depending on when you're listening to this. We hope that you can join us, and it's Mini Nats for short. It's going to be amazing. Huge shout out to Jason Bell and the entire cast of characters who put on that amazing event. Biggity Mike the Mayor has been MIA. It's so odd that every time he's MIA, we keep hearing about the Smut Bandit running amok down in Naples, Florida. It's so odd. I mean, you couldn't script it. But luckily, we got some of our Canadian friends that told us their one goal this year is to help ODB catch the Smut Bandit. And I don't know if it's going to happen, but it's so odd that Mike is always not there. It's kind of like Bruce Wayne isn't there when Batman's around. You can't make this stuff up. But I do have one question for you. Are you ready? And I know Joey is not ready. He certainly has already torn out his dash in his truck. But Joey, if there's any rejoice, J-Dub, as I sometimes will refer to him, he's also known by many other nicknames, some we can't use here. But the one thing I will say is with Miggity Mike the Mayor here or not here and not able to miss the question or the answer, rather, you don't have to worry about slamming, and jamming the dashboard in your truck. But we will see you at Mini Nats, Joey. So the trivia is, what hit song was in a 1984 classic film, Karate Kid, however, did not appear on that soundtrack? So we're going back 41 years. If you weren't feeling old yet, and you're from the era that many of us are from, you might be feeling old, because of 41 years ago this year. What hit song was in the 1984 classic, the film Karate Kid, but did not appear on the soundtrack? Now, I'm also going to give you guys a bonus. This is the honor system, if you will. And the bonus is, do you know who sang that song? So I probably covered this one many, 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 many episodes ago. You guys know, if you know me, ODB, I love the 80s, and I certainly love this song, okay? It's cheesy and corny, or however you want to spin it. You could say whatever you want to say. I love this song. It is Cruel Summer by the English girl group Bananarama, okay? I almost wanted to coin Mike's truck somehow Bananarama, but we knew Banana Hammock was really the right name there. But the song was released in 1983. Many of you may not know that. It was initially a standalone single, but it was subsequently included on their self-titled debut album. The song reached number 8 in the UK, so it was a big hit. Now, here's the crazy thing. Cruel Summer was an immediate success when it was released in the UK. Okay. But the international popularity of it did soar after the inclusion of the 1984 film, The Karate Kid, which, if you're a fan of it, you probably watched the whole Cobra Kai series. This song was not on the soundtrack because the group did not allow for the song to be included in the soundtrack. Whether that was a specific play in terms of, well, hey, maybe people will hear it, they'll like it, it's already a hit, maybe then they'll go buy our single, which I think at that time still 45s were big, right? The 7-inch little tiny records, if you will. But regardless, it's still a big hit. Ace of Base, of course, redid it. And if you're a hip hop fan, there's I think Big Tone, one of my favorite California rappers, I think he made a version because he did an album a few years back where he did like Summertime and Tell Me, a bunch of different awesome beats and kind of real hit songs, if you will, and he made rap versions of those. Trivia with Miggity Mike the Mayor, who again is not here, is brought to you by Garage Gear Clothing. We talk about partners with OLP. Certainly Garage Gear Clothing is up there, and we continue to partner with them. They offer free shipping, last I checked, on orders $100 or more on their website. They have merchandise for the females, the children, the youngins, for the guys, the ladies, you name it. They've got it on a shirt, and it's all automotive themed. Tip of the cap to the kinfolk at Garage Gear Clothing. Next, we got the scene updates. Really, I've already hinted at this. I am working on a short episode for Monday. Hopefully it'll come out on Monday, where we talk about the things you want to know about the show. So many of you are going to be traveling either this coming weekend, like a Phil Fowler, very early, like a Scotty the Body. Many of you are going to be peeling out of town. Be safe getting to Mini Nats. Some of you will be on the road mid to early next week. And this will give you some content that you can consume that will talk about some of the key things, including the auction and a little bit more, hopefully, detail that I can acquire about the switch suspension giveaway truck. Also, I want to reinforce that hopefully, if all the stars align, the Mini Truck Hall of Fame committee, which I'm a part of, we should be revealing the names of the 2025 inductees that we recently voted on. So more on that. The scene updates is brought to you by Local Rides with a Z Mag. That's Local Rides Mag. Hit them up. They are a homegrown magazine that is produced very, very well. It's Local Rides Mag, and the Rides is with a Z, not an S. Local Rides Mag, hit them up. Hut 1, Hut 2, Hut 3, Hut. Old Dirty Ballard, live and uncut. I recently DJ'd a house party. And it was so awesome because when I was in middle school and I really started getting into music, I just loved seeing everything with DJing and the guys carrying the crates and, watching the film Juice that came out in January 92, I think, watching that on VHS tape. Of course, everything's different now, right? You just have a phone, you have an iPad. If you're like DJ Maze, the DJ to the scene, then of course you probably have some nice turntables and stuff, but certainly I did not have that. Speaking of DJ Maze, I wanted to give a huge shout out, and that's really kind of where I want to get to here. Hut 1, Hut 2, Hut 3, Hut. Old Dirty Biz Allard, live and uncut. I want to give a shout out to people like DJ Maze. I told this story to a friend recently, is in the COVID era when the bars started shutting down, DJ Maze, I think, kind of realized, wow, some of those Friday, Saturday gigs, some of those Anheuser-Busch type Christmas parties that he was a part of, that he could, had his side hustle at, some of that kind of dried up because of COVID. But, a guy like a DJ Maze and Diggity Dom, what they did is DJ Maze said, hey, what can I do to contribute to the scene? And he started the Twitch with DJ Maze Radio. That led into booking more gigs, and he's arguably one of the best DJs in our scene. Just as an example, at Mini Nats, he's doing a great job every year. And I love seeing the success of my brother. He also recently launched his own podcast, Behind the Deck. I think it's Behind the Decks with an S. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, you name it. Go check it out. I will give you full disclosure. There's 2 episodes out now that I saw as of today. I haven't had a chance to listen to episode 1, but I'm excited to do that. And we'll, of course, be doing that on our way as we gallivant north to Mini Nats. ODB Live and Uncut is brought to you by our kinfolk at Colorado Custom Wheels. ColoradoCustom.com. If you see an old wheel that you want made, they will do it. Arguably the best shine and billet in the entire scene in terms of wheels. And also a huge shout out to the kinfolk over there because they have arguably some of the best customer service that you will experience in the automotive industry. Podcast updates. The last thing I have, and then we're going to roll into Sclem's audio, is if I've said this before. I like promoting a lot of brands out there. Some people would probably say, "Yo, ODB, you promote other brands more than you promote your own products." I know I never claimed to be the best business person. I just do this stuff because I like it, and I don't. Any of the money that we ever make always goes back into more artwork with brand, buying awards from Welch's Chop Shop for the 2025 or 2024 OLP honors. Anything that we can do to help further the scene and highlight great people. This was our Minis Are the Name of the Game, which is a spinoff of the DJ Magic Mike early 90s album. Bass is the name of the game. Of course, we've got DJ ODB. That was a Mike idea. And then you have Derek V's amazing Mazda Cat Plus. Rest in peace to Derek. It is hard to see, but we do have an RIP Derek on the front license plate. These are now shipping. Now, if you're listening to this day one, I will tell you, you probably want to get out there if you're looking to order this stuff and order it soon, because I will shut down the site for any of these products as we get into mini nats, because this stuff is probably going to all sell out. I will tell you, we do have a few of the blue shirts. So this time we kind of put ourselves out on a limb and we ordered a few of the blues. These come out so good. Graphic Disorder prints all of our stuff. We did a little bit bigger logo. And Scotty the Body hits me up and he goes, "Yo, I got my stuff. It's odd. I don't even see an OLP logo on it." And I said, that's how confident that we are in our stuff, that it's no diss to anybody. But what I'll tell you is, again, any person would say, "Yo, ODB, you're crazy. You're not even branding your latest shirt with your logo. How would people know where to get it?" Well, I think if you look at this stuff, you know who's dropping the hottest stuff out there. You know what I mean? Remember the song Pharrell, "Drop It Like It's Hot" with Snoop? We're trying to do the same thing. But, in all seriousness, it's, if we can make enough to be able to afford to order the stuff and get it out to the great people like many of you watching and listening, fantastic. If we have a little bit left in the bank where we can get more artwork from Graphic Disorder, fantastic. That's all we want to do. We want to highlight great people. For as long as I'll continue to do this, that's what we're going to continue to do. And I don't run it like a typical business because I'm not looking, I have a day job and I'm content with that. I don't need anything else. I'm happy doing this podcast. It brings me joy, and it brings me joy to see the comments from you guys and, people that appreciate the stories and whatnot. With that being said, I know this was a little bit longer intro than I intended. Stay on the rise. Enjoy this audio. Please listen to the end. Sclem is a great dude. Thank you so much, Mike, for sitting down. I know it took us a little while to make it happen, but that's what we do at OLP. We make it happen. Shout out to Cal Concepts. And this is a shirt that they sent me. I keep pointing to the wrong way. Stay on the rise, everyone. Much love, much respect. Be safe out there and be safe on your road to mini nats. ODB, we got ya. Peace. Yo, I'm so excited to sit down with Mike Sclem. We got so much to talk about. I appreciate your patience. We linked up a couple years ago. I want to talk about all of it, but how you doing, brother?
I'm doing great, and thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Why don't you give everyone, just so in case I mess it up, give them your full name and your nickname.
Okay, so my name is Mike Sclimenti, and my nickname is Sclem.
I'm like, well, the real Sclem shady, please stand up. It's
Pretty
almost
much.
like SKLEM, the
Heard
dictionary, how they'll put the, they put the weird spelling with all, like how it actually, I forget the word, but yeah, good stuff. Dude, I mean, the more we chat and text and things like that, the more I'm just like, wow, like we really, I mean, I think we all know this. We came up in a great era. I don't want to lose any of the younger kinfolk that listen, but we got so many great things to talk about. I'm kind of anxious to learn a little bit about you though, your backstory. Like, did you grow up in California? Like, where was that? Like, give us a little bit of intel.
Yeah, so I grew up in California by LAX airport, so in a small town, Westchester, part of Los Angeles. And yeah, I mean, I lived there until I graduated from college, and then I moved to Orange County. Well, actually, I moved to Redondo Beach before that. So it's funny, that's where I met Kevin Aguilar
Okay.
and Travis Nowak. But yeah, I mean, I lived in basically the South. We call it the South Bay. So SoCal, and then moved to Orange County right before I moved to Texas.
Damn. Okay. Yeah. Got it. So, okay. 10-4 on that. And, we got to be around the same age. Nice beard, by the way. When you think back to some of the childhood, it's so neat for me to watch. Now, I've talked about this before. Like, if I watch, E.T., I was very young when it came out, but it's like you watch the bike scene and, like, that neighborhood was being built. And, you go back and you see some of these epic films and, these photos of Tony Hawk and Upland and all this different stuff. Do you have any memories of like that skateboarding, BMX, like pop culture era?
Oh yeah. So like I was big into skateboarding. My brother went to school with Aaron Murray from Dogtown,
Wow.
and I went to school with Scott Oster's sister. And so I ended up meeting Scott through her. And yeah, like I haven't talked to him in years, but it's funny. We kind of reconnected of all places on the golf course. So I played golf growing up. It's one of the sports that I was really into. So I think I started playing like first grade. But yeah, I mean, back in the skateboarding, I used to skateboard all the time. There were a couple guys in my neighborhood who had a really killer half pipe, and they'd have Christian Asoy over all the time. And, actually Aaron Murray, his nickname's Fingers Murray. So my brother was there when he was making a skateboard and cut his finger off on the bandsaw. And then he ripped his pinky off. His ring got caught on a nail in the coping when he went to do a hand plant, and it took his finger, and that was at the Sosas. So they lived in my neighborhood. So yeah, I mean, like seeing all these guys, and there was this guy that came in. He was a pro from, gosh, I want to say it was Brazil. His name was Porke, I think his name was. And
Sounds familiar.
like, yeah, like, so these guys, I used to build jump ramps, and like I had like one of the best jump ramps in the neighborhood, and like Hasoy rode it. These guys, they taught us how to do wall rides. We'd take it down to the elementary school and do all that stuff. I mean, skateboarding was a huge part of my life growing up. Me and my buddy Danny, we had a half pipe in his backyard, and we used to ride it pretty much every day. I mean, we'd go surfing in the morning, we'd go golfing after school, and then we'd come home and we'd ride a half pipe. So that's one of the greatest things about California is
Yep.
that the weather's so good, you can do stuff pretty much all day.
Yes, and people have talked about in the past, like, keep me honest on this. People talk about how you could be surfing one afternoon, depending on where you live, and you could almost be skiing that night, not water skiing, but like, the people that go to Lake Tahoe and stuff, like, because there's the different climates, right? Granted, that may not
Yeah.
be, we know, not all year round, but
Yeah,
that's
you could
the way I've
totally.
been explained.
Totally, yeah. You could go to Mountain High, which is only about, I think it was like maybe an hour away from us. And you can go snowboarding in the morning. I didn't ever go to Mountain High. I pretty much liked either going to Snow Summit or Bear Mountain, which was, I think it was about like 2 hours away. But yeah, I
Yep.
mean, there were times where I'd go in the morning, go snowboarding, and then come home. We'd do a sunset session surfing down in Manhattan Beach.
Yeah, that's epic. It's so funny. I mentioned this and people probably get sick of me talking about it, but it's crazy how much media is like lost, right? And when I was a kid, like we're talking like 86, 87, 88. Somehow in Land O'Lakes, I mentioned my parents got cable and cable came through there and we have somewhere my dad still had it. It's like the little ticker bot, where you'd move the thing. I used to mess with it like I was a DJ, and it was like you change the channel.
Yep.
And we had ESPN. And in the 80s, they had this show called Hot Summer Nights. And it just, dude, I used to just get lost in that show because it comes on and it was wind sailing, with the surfboards. It was surfing. It was street. It was BMX. It was freestyle. And like I was like in heaven. And it's crazy. Like you go out and you try to find information on that. Like you can find more about that Nickelodeon show that came on in the late 80s, Skate TV. Like you could find people that uploaded those and they VHS them. But the hot summer nights, I mean, I remember just watching that stuff, just being addicted. And the vans used to do the different tours and all that. And some of that was broadcast, at least out here. But man, it's just when I think back, I just go, wow, if I had a time machine and I could go back, even though I wasn't good at skating, the culture, hanging out with the kids, trying and practicing, to me, it was some of the best times of my life.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I mean, there was like, I still have one of my skateboards that, so there was a local skate shop down in Hermosa Beach called ET Surf Shop. And I went down there and I saw Tony Hawk, Per Wellender, and Tommy Guerrero skating. I got all their autographs on my Alva Daggertail, which I still have.
Wow.
Yeah, so I recently, like I just had it, the board's delaminating, so like I won't ride it.
Sure.
And I just like I still had my old school trucks and I put them back on it and put my old Bones 3 wheels on it. And I got it all back together. I saw a video that you were showing where you did recently your skateboard holder. And so I've been telling myself, hey, I want to do one of those, but I'm going to do it, wall mounted so I
Yes.
can put it up right next to my bicycles.
Yeah, I could
And
send you some of the stuff that I've been wanting to do it for years, and it's funny. I do intend to wall mount it, but whenever I had built it out, I was like, wow, it's kind of standing up, so I kind of leaned it up. But yeah, I
yeah,
mean, like sometimes like those things like they might be basic for us to do, but it's like it's so far down on the list, or it's like I'll get to it one day. And I'm like that one day I was like, I'm gonna do it. And I watched the video, even though if I have an idea on how I'm gonna do something, I still watch a video. And one popped up, I think a guy in Australia, and he was like, I just did this and this, and he had his accent and he was like, and I was like, oh wow. And then when I built it, I was like, wow, like man, I could build these and sell them, but it was kind of cool.
yeah, no, I agree. It's tough to make time for some of those small things when you're like
Yeah.
running a family and you've got work. We're older now, so we've got responsibilities. It's not like when we were younger and we could just spend all our time doing whatever we wanted. So yeah, I totally get it.
Yeah, for the listeners, this is a kind of a shameless plug. There's a guy that I want to have on soon, and it ties into what we're talking about on Instagram and YouTube. I think it's called the Nostalgic Neighborhood. Going off the top of my head, it's a guy about our age, and he built a trick star. He had acquired the frame and fork, and he kind of put together the parts. But he also recently built. I could never do this kind of stuff, but he built like a diorama, and it's this little. It almost looks like a skate shop. And what he did is these guys will print the things, and they'll put the little graphics on these teeny tiny decks, and then he put a little with all these little things they build, and it's like a little TV, and then he put like the Bronze Brigade type stuff on
I
it.
saw that.
Yeah, you probably saw that, and
Yeah, that's rad.
it's mind blowing to me that like that kind of stuff back in the day was like these guys like order the stuff online and boom they're building the stuff. So to me it's just really cool because it reinforces the era that we grew up in and how much we love it.
Yeah, so I used to like back in the day, I used to get, copies of Thrasher magazine and I would go in the back where they had all the pictures of the decks, like maybe it's Sword and Skull or something like that. And I would actually cut it out and then in wood shop, I think it was wood shop or one of those shop classes which they don't typically have anymore. My teacher said, "Hey, if you want to make a skate, I wanted to make mini fingerboards." And so he showed me how to like take a block of wood, you cut it and then laminate. You take a planer and you shave off. It was like a block. I forget what they're called, a block plane or something. You shave it off and you cut thin strips of, off of the pine and then you put glue and then you sandwich it just like a real skateboard. And so then I would pull them out right before they were completely dry. And then I would actually add concave to them. And then I would take those pictures from the back of the magazine that showed all the decks and I would glue it on the bottom.
That's
And then I'd
cool.
use flat toothpicks and make some, rails on them and stuff like that. I'd never had any trucks or wheels, but I mean, guys were doing that with like, they would take, erasers and they would take the wheels off of a Hot Wheel and then they would stick it through the eraser and make a truck. So, I mean,
Yeah.
that was back in the old school days, kind of like if you were looking at like the old Bones Brigade videos. I think it was a Search for Animal Chin. I think they were doing that inside one of the, like a wash tub or something. So like even just, I watched one of those recently and it brought back so many old memories. And I think I found that little fingerboard somewhere, but
That's so cool.
I can't put my eyes on it right now, but it's somewhere in a box.
Yeah, and if you think about when I remember being in elementary school, when we'd go to Walmart, you could buy like this package and it had a little bicycle in it. And the bicycle it turned and I'd mess around with that thing all day, loving rad and all this. But that was even way before the fingerboards came out. If you remember probably how much money, I forget if it was the 90s when fingerboards became big. I know there was that slump in skateboarding, but the fingerboard stuff is big. And then it's ironic because For those watching on YouTube, I have one of the reissues, I think it was 20 Volterra board, which is from Back to the Future.
Yeah.
I just saw today, Madrid is a skateboard company out in California. I knew a few months ago, Chad Luke and a few people told me about it. They were doing another run of the Volterra board. And I think that was to help, because right in January, you guys had those horrible, well, the Californians, because you're in Texas
Yeah.
now, right? Californians,
Yeah.
they had the horrible fire. So I think they were trying to help raise funds for that. But today I saw not only did they do that run, but they're going to make a fingerboard of the Volterra, which I thought was super cool. So, it's neat because that was a product for so long. And you think about now, I mean, guys are doing these little dioramas and stuff. There was something else I can tell you. I can't think of the Instagram name right now, but many of you guys have probably have seen it. There's an Instagram name, and a guy I think even has a copyright now on the name. It's called the tiny bedroom or something, and you probably have seen him where he'll create these little rooms, and it's like a bedroom, and he'll put like the Goonies poster, but then they do the little TV sets just like the Nostalgic Neighborhood guy did, and he sells them, and he'll customize
Oh,
them and
wow.
stuff. And I just was like, I mean, it's so cool, man.
Well, it's cool how he used a Raspberry Pi in order to control that and show the
Yeah.
old videos and stuff. I was like, that's sick.
Yeah, we were going to get to this, but I wanted you to point out, like, you're kind of a techie guy, right? You're in the tech industry. So like hearing those type of things like the Raspberry Pis and the emulators and this, it's crazy how far technology has come, because with these guys doing these little videos, like I'm like, how do they do this stuff? But it's neat that hobbyists, if you will, can do this stuff at their home.
Yeah. That's one of those things, though. I never really got into it. So I never really got in on the programming side or anything. I mean, aside from doing websites and,
Sure.
stuff like that for the club and for a couple of my buddies, I did the website. So I maintained the website for Xtreme Lowz ever since I think it was like, actually, I want to say it was 90. I think we launched the website in 95. I want to say 94, 95. I mean, it's pretty soon after we started the club. And then I was doing the website assisting with the website for Auto Indulgence. I was doing for custom creations. And that's where Adam Madrigal used to work way back in the day. And that's where I met Ryan Evans.
That's
Actually, I met
Customs
a
and
bunch of
Adam.
guys through that. I met
Yep.
a bunch of guys through custom creations. I mean, I met Tom McQueenie. Travis I met at a show, but Travis used to go in there all the time. It's like there was a bunch of guys that lived in SoCal, and we all kind of knew each other through friends. Carlos Paez, I met him. John Lotto. Like, I remember when John Lotto's old, his old yellow full size standard, it was a standard cab short bed Chevy, like OBS, and his license plate was Too High to See You. And I remember when it was being built at Chris's shop, or Chris was doing some work on it. I remember I was like, whoa, like this is my first, experience with looking at like full size trucks. And actually, like, even kind of where I started getting into the whole mini truck thing. This is before I was even, before Xtreme Lowz even started. So yeah, we
Yeah,
had
that's epic, Schlem.
we had a club that was a, pretty goofy name. I
Uh-huh.
think a lot of people start out with like goofy clubs and then they kind of mature and either leave or the club breaks up or whatever. But, a bunch of us guys, like, we all just moved over to Xtreme Lowz.
Oh yeah.
So
And for those that don't know, I mean, it's been an honor to have so many great people on, like Adam and like John. You were one of the early members, right? Kind of, I think, often referred to as kind of the original three. There's maybe a couple of folks that came before, but for those that don't know, shout out to Brandon Burrell. For those that haven't listened to his podcast, Modified Rides, he's doing a great job, having a lot of diverse guests. But when he was at the helm at Street Trucks, he really, I think, in my opinion, helped push to get Xtreme Lowz. There was a nice write up on the club, 30. You've got the shirt on, so you can show that. But in addition to that, if you guys want to check it out, it's still on the Street Trucks website. So you can either Google Xtreme Lowz, it's XTREMELOWZ, and you can even Google Mike's name. He spelled it earlier, SCLIMENTI, and it will land on that article. But I think it's really cool because Xtreme Lowz is one of those clubs that may not get the lion's share of the love, but hey, you guys have been around and doing the damn thing.
yeah, I mean, we've had tons of features. I mean, probably not as many as like Relaxed or NC, but I mean, dude, we've had tons of features, tons of covers. Brandon used to be in the club back in the day. And yeah, I mean, just we've all kind of just stayed friends. So like, I don't think Brandon's really in a club right now.
Yeah, I don't think
It's
he's
just one
kind
of
of
those
like,
things. I think you get into on the business side and you don't feel like you really want to be in a club because people think you're pulling favors or something like that.
yeah.
We're just all buddies. So I've known
Exactly.
Brandon for a long time. Him and Adam are like best friends. But Adam and I are, like really good friends too. And then, John Lucky. So the original three, I guess they call it. Yeah, that's what everybody calls us. But probably because we're still the only three that are, the original members and kind of put Xtreme Lowz on the map.
It's a very good point. And in addition to that, when you think about like pulling favors and things like that, I mean, no offense to truck clubs and car clubs that still, for instance, like you guys, some people get together and meet just like friends. There's some couples get together and go out for double dates, and there's other people, as I've gotten a little bit older, my wife and I kind of go out solo, and if we ever get a chance. But what I've always thought was interesting is, like, as we've gotten older, a lot of us, we don't even really have the time to go, hey, guys, we're gonna have a meeting at 7 o'clock on Sunday. It's like, granted, some guys can make it happen, depends on where you live and all that, but I would imagine the majority of clubs, and the bigger ones especially in different chapters, just we don't have the time for that. But it is cool to think back when we used to go meet in the parking lots and go to club meetings and stuff. That was a big thing.
Yeah, I mean, we used to meet at Adam's house or John's house. Like I think it was every Sunday, and then we moved it to the pizza place down the street. It was like on the Westchester Inglewood border. So we'd mob that place and have our trucks. I mean, most of them weren't, back in the day, weren't bagged or anything like that, because that was still a relatively new thing. Air shocks was the thing, or hydros. But yeah, we used to go down there all the time, and like we always had meetings. But it's one of those things where everybody gets a life and they grow up, so it's like not as easy to do. Like a lot of the guys here in Texas, I haven't seen them for a while. I think I saw one of the guys at C10. Was it C10's in the park back in, I think it was September. But yeah, I mean, and then obviously I saw the guys when I was at Mini Nats a couple years ago. But that's the last time like I saw most everybody.
Yeah, and it just happens because life just gets busy, and the big P word, priorities, right? And
Yeah.
really, I remember being as a kid, I look at adults and I'm like, how do you get home and you're just kind of tired, and there's a part of me that never wants to take a break, but there's also a part of me that's like, just getting up at 5, 5:30 in the morning, and going through the daily routine of whether you're commuting or not, right? That's a big factor. Some are remote every day. I'm not. So it's like, and then you get home and you fight traffic and you got the idiot drivers and, just life. And then sometimes I just get home and go, tonight I just need to mentally unplug, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And then, it's tough too, because there's, not even looking at just the, work
Uh-huh.
aspect and family aspect. There's other hobbies that we have too.
Sure.
Like I hung up golf for a long time, and I just recently started playing again. But I mean, I did take, so when my girls were really young, and I think you're going to show it later, I was building a GMC Safari van, so like an Astro, and that was going to be like the family cruiser, because I got rid of, I had my Nissan, I bought GMC Sonoma as a tow vehicle, and I ended up like fully customizing it. And yeah, that I ended up selling that
I
when
forget if you put
right
it in the
before I had
featured
my first
one.
daughter.
Sorry, I forget if you put it in the features for the van.
The van is under, I think, random.
Random. Okay. Yeah, because I was going through right here. Okay. I didn't realize it was a folder earlier when I was looking at it. So if you're on YouTube, you can see that. Sorry to stop you there, Mike.
Oh, no problem. Yeah, so that was it when I first did it. So we did a lowering tech article on it. I think Mike Self did that in Street Trucks, and like I think Falcon and Weld, helped take care of that. And then I was gonna like do this thing full crazy. I did a rendering and had RJ from Eye Candy. I think the rendering's in there too.
Oh,
Yeah, there
there
it
you
is. It
go.
was called Project Breadbox. And I was gonna, go crazy on the thing, but then it just, it was taking a while. Joe Musso was working on it, and I was gonna trade him my 720 for all the work. And it just one of those things where, it's like a homie hookup, right?
Yeah.
And so it just kind of got put on the back burner, and I just ended up saying, you know what, hey Joe, I don't want it anymore. You can go ahead and have it. And I think he donated it to the local community college so they could,
Wow.
do body and paint. I think it was the class where he learned how to do body and paint, or the school with the teacher there. So I think he donated it to them so kids could actually have something that they could work on. But man, the mods on it were crazy. Like I picked different aspects of different people's, Astrovans that I wanted. So I wanted to make sure that it still had a split front, it has split front grill like, Chevys do, even though it was a Safari. I didn't want to have a full Phantom. I wanted to make sure it had Phantom over the lights. I wanted to make sure that like it had, all the moldings were shaved. I wanted to make sure that the sliding track for the third door was shaved. So like, it's just I Cadillac taillights, it was just I tried to figure out all kinds of stuff. I was going to do a rag top in it. So yeah, so right there it's shaved. That's crazy because something happens to your door. Now you got to cut that open in order to fix it. I saw like, Craig Elder and, you know, Cope Kessler and their vans. Adam Hartley, his van was sick too. That was at SEMA. It was the orange one.
Yeah.
I think it was a little bit older one. It wasn't like the one that has the extended rear.
Uh-huh.
And I just saw all those vans. I'm like, God, these things are so sick. And then my mom bought a new one and she had this one. And I was like, hey, Mom, I want it for you. I want to get it from you. So I ended up buying it. And I think I got it for like $3,500 or something. Had a Vortec V6 in it. And it was pretty nice. Um, I think when I took it out there to drop it off, we ended up towing Mike Self's wife, Marissa's Biscayne wagon out there. So I think she had a 59 Biscayne wagon.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry, it was a Brookwood two-door. So we towed it out there with that, and the thing was backward. We put it on. We couldn't get it on the trailer the right way, so we put it on backwards. And driving it out to Vegas the whole way, the whole thing's just shimmying back and forth. It was crazy.
Yeah,
But we got it there, and then I left the van, and Joe started working on it not too long after that.
shout
But
out to
yeah,
Joe Russo. Now, I do want to show this because for those that don't know, our buddy Matt Torgerson, shout out to Matt. He built this van in the late '80s, right into the 2000s, and it was funny because on his toolbox, he had the green Astro van that became the one that Craig Elder eventually had. He had that photo. He had the photo of Copes and stuff, and you could see he had the sliding rag top. And what he did different on his is he molded in the sliding rag top, which was kind of neat. It was one of those things.
nice.
But to your point, what's so cool is it depends on where you lived in the country. We were all getting our information from like kind of the main source, right, at that time. And it was neat because the light at the end of the tunnel was bagged or bodied, completely shaved, maybe a one-off front end, molding on front ends. In the late '90s into the 2000s became even more popular because contrary to some people's beliefs, the stuff did go down. Like the Brian Marshall, he had that Mazda with the Mercedes front end and stuff early on. But yeah, it's pretty awesome to kind of see the van. Now, I do want to backtrack for a moment. You gave us a little bit of insight into like how you got in the scene, right? But like what was there like a bug or a certain thing that just grabs you, Mike, that said, "Hey, I want to be part of the scene," like an older brother, a neighbor, things like that?
So actually, yes. I remember back when I was probably, gosh, I'm gonna have to do some math here, which I'm not doing good in math in my head. I want to say it was the 80s. My cousin Cliff, we called him Cliffy, and he had a Toyota. I want to say it was like a 84, 85, because I'm pretty sure that it still had the lipped bed on it. And like, dude, he was hammered on the ground. There was no, he didn't have hydros, he didn't have bags, nothing. I mean, there wasn't even bags back then. This thing was so low, like, I don't know how he even drove the thing. He had the torsion bars probably turned all the way down, and I don't know what size blocks. He probably had stacked blocks in the rear and probably yanked leaf springs and stuff like that. But this thing would drag everywhere. Yeah, I mean, God, the way that our trucks rode back in the day was absolutely the worst. So like when bags came out, that just made everything, that like made everything really boom. But when we were younger, we didn't care. It was all about looking cool, right? And driving something that was rad. So my cousin Cliff, he actually had one of those, and I was always into that. On the other side, I was always into VW Bugs. And so my first vehicle was supposed to be a 68 VW Bug. I was going to buy it off. So John McFarland lived around the block from me. And the guy that lived next door to him had a Bug that he was, selling for $850. And so I was going to buy it. And my dad's like, nope, you're not getting that. I don't want to have to work on it every weekend. Because, Bugs, they break down. And I'm not going to leave it stock. I'm going to lower it. I'm put Porsche alloys on it. I'm going to, do all kinds of stuff to it. And it's going to break down. that kind of transition. So John was into bugs, and then he was also into like hot rods. So like he had a 66 Chevelle, he had a 67 Chevelle wagon, he had a 60, I want to say it was a 63 Nova wagon, which was the catalyst for me getting my wagon, back, I think it was like 4 or 5 years ago. And then I ended up trading that for my C10 that I have now. But I was really into bugs. I was John got a truck. He got rid of one of his bugs at some point, got rid of his Chevelle, and then he bought a Nissan hardbody, and like he lowered it, and the wheels sticking out, and I want to say they were like saw blades or something. Yeah, so I mean, and I was like, whoa, that's cool. And then I think I started going to El Camino College in Torrance, and a guy had a red hard body that was lowered on Porsche alloys. It looked similar to the one that was in the BFG ads in the old MiniTruckin, but it wasn't bodied, it wasn't bagged, and it had chrome fender flare. The last one, chrome fender flares were cool. I was like, wow, that thing's rad. And so I was like, I need to get a mini truck. And originally I wanted a 4x4 because, I was hanging out with Chris at Custom Creations and, all those guys. And I was like, I really want to get a 4x4. And my dad said, nope, you're not getting a 4x4. There's no reason to have a 4x4 because you don't go off-roading. It's like, okay. So I ended up buying my 720. Actually, it's funny. Even before that, John and I went to look at a Mazda. And this goes back to how times have changed. We looked at a Mazda. It was over by UCLA. So we drove to Westwood, met this guy, and he's like, yeah. He goes, it's got this giant hole in the door where somebody pulled the key lock out. And so, I mean, this hole was probably this big. We didn't know anything about shaving. If I had known stuff about shaving, everything might have turned out different for me because I probably would have bought that. I would have shaved it and I would have had a Mazda instead of my 720. And so, there was like my cousin Clifford, he had, a Toyota guy that lived, I think it was like 2 or 3 blocks over from me. His name was Jimmy. He had a convertible 720. So I always liked 720s and like, even like, cars that go boom video. And, a lot of them had 720s. Only problem with 720s is you can't get them, super low unless you do a bunch of work on them. They've got that nasty cross member that hangs down. So you got to chop that out. But this, this is back in the day when people really didn't do all that stuff. So yeah, I mean, I always liked custom vehicles. I always liked bugs. And it just kind of started transitioning into the whole mini truck scene when John got his. I mean, because I liked Jimmy's, I liked my cousins, and then John got his, and then he sold that. I forget what he got in between. And then he bought a 6 720 it had a walkthrough. We called it was some really weird green. It was like some neon green, like pagan gold and neon green mixed. It was really weird looking, and like it would flip flop in the sun. And so I was like, okay, I gotta get a 720. Oh, and our buddy Chris Edwards, he still has, I think he's got a Mitsubishi now, but I loved the color, the stock. It wasn't brown. It was like a orangey brown that Nissan had. And I loved his truck. And so that's why I bought mine, because he had the same exact truck and his was on the stock ST wheels. Okay. And so mine was a factory ST. And so I looked specifically for an ST because I wanted the sunroof. I wanted the center console. I wanted the bucket seats. I didn't want to have to add all that stuff. I wanted everything. I'm weird. I like stuff that's factory. So that's why I reupholstered all the factory stuff and didn't change out the console or any of that stuff. But I mean, that just kind of, it was just, I don't know, it was weird. Like I never really expected it to happen, but I always liked cars. And then it just kind of moved into where I liked, custom cars. I think the first show I went to, I was driving my 84 Civic, which I got right before the 720. And I think the only reason why I was even able to get the 720, I was a starving student. I was working. I was going to college, just trying to, make something of my life. And I got rear-ended in the Civic, and that gave me the money when I got my settlement, that gave me the money to buy the 720, and it was over from there.
Yeah. And
everything's been custom since.
Yeah, it's interesting to kind of know, because like to your point, with the skateboarding stuff, dovetailing into so many folks over the past 10 years have talked about the love for VWs, and then, how that dovetails right into mini trucks. And then, you had a sport compact obviously the accident, glad you were okay, but then that afforded you to be able to do what you wanted to do. Now I want to share the screen here, and again, you did a great job of hooking me up with a bunch of photos here. It made my job easier. MiniTruckin Magazine, November '95. So this is crazy. We're talking 30 years ago this November. On the left side of the screen for those YouTube watchers, Courtney Halliwell shoots the 720, and it runs in the famous The Construction Zone.
Yeah, that was super cool. That was like I want to say that was the first time I met Courtney. Yeah, and he's a cool dude. And when, he asked me to shoot that, I was like, gosh, I mean, that was like, my dream. I never imagined that I would have a full feature vehicle, but
Yeah,
yeah, I
you
was
could.
stoked just to get in there in black and white. The guys that, later on when it went color, that was really cool because you can't even tell, like the color of it was like a teal green. And I had like, yeah, everyone made fun of me, but I kind of put like a little purple guide code on it and stuff, and
Yeah,
just to kind of give it a little bit of a pop. They used to call it the Easter egg, but
right.
like a lot of the mods, like the bumper on it was done. Carlos Paez on his hard body, which was on the cover of MiniTruckin, it was the one that was Tangelo, which is part of the reason why I ended up deciding to paint mine orange, but I didn't want to paint it the same color as his, which is why I went with the orange shimron. And, I remember Chris Klein from Custom Creations was doing the Toyota bumper and balance on his. And I was like, wow, that looks sick. I said, I want to do that on my 720. So, back then you can just go down to, I think I went down to Leader Auto Parts in Gardena and just, walked in there and said, yeah, I need a chrome. Actually at the time it was a chrome bumper and a painted valance. And then later on I took the valance and had it chrome plated. And then after, I ended up deciding to change it all back. But yeah, I mean, I was totally stoked. I think that was at Spring Splash. So was that Spring? Yeah, that was Spring Splash, I
Yeah. So
believe.
to your point, that would have been
It's
April
at the
of
river.
'95.
Yeah. Yeah, it was Spring Splash at the river. And dude, that was some good times.
Yeah, I want to talk
Super
about the
fun.
truck shows, but in this episode, one thing that I always noticed is Courtney. They spelled extreme like the EXTREME. I mean, obviously, probably like just a
Yeah.
typo. But what's neat is you can see the logo Xtreme Lowz, tip of the cap to XL in the construction zone. Which for the younger folks, you may not realize. I mean, and maybe you do because there's not a lot of magazines. But in this era, to get a show coverage like just a little photo, let alone this is a feature. And oh, by the way, you got Jeff Matthews 89 Extra Cab and Mike Farmer's Cab Plus. I mean, what a epic 2-page layout with three 720, a Toyota, and a Mazda. Pretty freaking awesome.
Yeah. I'm totally stoked. It was kind of a dream come true at the time. So yeah,
Now, what
I
I'm going to
mean,
do is I'm going to share my screen so we can fast forward to because I want people to see this. And sorry, I apologize. When I share my screen, it kind of pops up that big thing. But what's ironic is you basically got 1 month shy of the 5th anniversary, so not November '95, and then oh by the way, October 2000 rolls around. I want to talk about this cover, and I also want to possibly break this segment out. I want to do a series going forward where we talk about each cover, as many as we can, in some detail and get some behind the scenes. We've had a lot of folks share. I know you've got some good intel on this one. I will start by saying that Xtreme Lowz write up that I mentioned earlier that Brandon Burrell helped kind of pull together. This photo is on Street Truck's website, and this is a behind the scenes photo. Before we talk about the cover, though, I wanted people to see the truck. Talk to us a little bit about from that 5 year transition, this orange 720 on the left side of the screen, and how it got to where it was.
yeah, so one of the things that I kind of had learned about building trucks was from, Adam Madrigal. So he was, in the lowrider scene, and, like he was telling me, so he built a vehicle with another guy named Mark that was called All Cracked Up. And he told me, like, I saw it in the driveway at our other friend Mark's house. And I was like, wow, this thing's rad. And he was explaining to me like how he did everything, how, no chrome touched gold, or no chrome touched chrome and no gold touched gold. It was always chrome on gold and gold on chrome. And like he taught me about hey, if you're going to build these things, take the time and make sure all your screw heads are turned the same direction and all that stuff. So, it kind of, and I'm an anal person anyway. So like I got OCD. So when I started building that truck, it's just like I would look and see what other guys are doing and say, I didn't have the money to go like crazy, crazy over the top like some of these guys. But, I was like, hey, with the funds that I have and the skill that I have and the friends that I have, I'm going to try and build the cleanest, one of the cleanest 720s ever done. I mean, it's still on the scene.
Sure.
So, it may not be as clean as it was back when I built it, but I haven't seen it in a while, even though it is back. It's in Texas now. So I am going to meet up with Brian Heff at some point so I can take a look at it and see it. Hopefully I'll see it at a show. I was supposed to go to LST this year, but I ended up not being able to go. So I don't know if he went, but it would have been cool to see it.
I don't think I saw it there, and I looked for every mini truck.
Okay. So at some point I'm going to get together with him. But, I went and I said, I think the inspiration was Adam helped John plumb nutty, which was his purple Chevy full size OBS extra cab. And so like that thing, like, had full color matched Line-X. It had, tweed, all kinds of crazy purple tweed interior. And I was like, okay. So I started using some of the same guys that John was using to build his truck. So Adam did a lot of work on it. And, at this point, so like, actually, it's funny. When the feature was taken, I didn't even have rear bags yet. It was on air shocks. So back in the day, I think I was actually one of the first people to run an air solenoid. I just had it on my rear and it was only a dump. Everybody had the Firestone compressors and gosh, was it the paddle gauges?
Yeah, the dual paddle.
Which was
Most people had
all
the two.
manual. Yeah, well, nothing was electric. And Grover Air Horns, Custom Creations started selling those, and they had it was using an air valve that was electric. I was like, I bet I could use this thing because I bought an air horn and I had the valve. I'm like, I bet I could use this thing to dump out my air in the rear.
A little quicker, yeah.
Yeah, so I ended up hooking it up and got it to work. And I had a switch where I would flip it on. The Firestone compressor would fill up the rear air shocks, and then I would just hit a button and it would drop the back, and it made the loud so. But yeah, I mean, going back to your question, it just, I don't know. I kept trying to I just wanted something that was super clean that, might inspire other people. The 720 that really inspired me, I don't remember, I don't think there was a name, but I think it made the cover of MiniTruckin twice. It was yellow, had dual side drafts on it. One, I think there was one, it had like a Winfield fade on the bottom, it was like an orange fade at the bottom, and I just remember this thing, like the whole engine compartment was all detailed in chrome, and I was like, wow, that thing is so rad. I want to build something that's equivalent to that. So I just kept going at it, and then met people, and things just worked out the way they did. I mean, I never really set out to build a feature truck. I just wanted to have something that was cool.
Oh yeah, and it's kind of crazy when we'll kind of get to this, but we'll talk about the cover more. There were only 4 720s, 4 covers with that, and that one was the March '95 yellow Nissan with the hood off. It was featured in August 1990, which was kind of crazy, that truck. So to your point, um, you think about the history, and it's so neat that you can draw from that, Mike, because I think it's important as we all get older, we give the props. I always talk about salute the OGs. There's people, like, if you think about the term OG, it used to be original gangster, whatever. But if you think about, like, as we get older, there's people that are OGs that were, people are called OGs that were born like in 2000. You're like, well, how are you OG? It's like, everybody has a different OG, right, that they look up to, is what I'm getting to. So it's neat that you can draw from, like, man, some of those trucks that inspired you. And then, oh, by the way, you get to live your dream, with the truck gracing the cover.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I totally agree. It was funny. Like
what I want to do here, what I want to do here is go ahead. I didn't mean to stop you.
No, I was just gonna, talk about how it was funny that later on I built my other truck, and it was just supposed to be a tow. This thing was supposed to get towed with it, and I never towed it with it.
Yeah,
So
that happens.
funny.
Now I have the issue right here. And I want to talk about, we want to talk about the truck as well, but this was a unique cover in my opinion. You uploaded these photos. It was kind of neat because for those that are watching on YouTube, you'll see on the right side, first bound copy. I think we kind of agreed that that's going to be an early probably issue in that era that allows for them to make sure there's nothing that was like really wonky. You don't want to go rend 10 or 20,000 copies without kind of giving a final thumbs up, right? But
Yeah.
talk to us about, you see the truck here. I think there's also possibly whether you want to talk about the truck first, the orange 720, or if you want to talk about it a little bit. I'm always curious on why this cover. There might be a backstory to it. The cover was a little bit different because you've got this epic shoot that, according to the credit, Lance and Mike Self. Okay, but
Yeah. So
why? Like the cover doesn't really resemble that epic photo shoot.
yeah, I honestly don't know. So I know that Mike Self shot the supporting photos for it.
Got it.
That photo right there was done by Lance.
Got it. Okay.
And I don't think you can see him in this. Lance, if you look at the shadow over to the left, that's actually Lance standing at his tripod taking the photos.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Over
then
here on the
they were
left.
actually, I think they were doing a few photo shoots at the same time. Down to the right, I think they were doing another vehicle, and then even further down, they were doing my buddy who I met through this at that show, Lionel. They were doing his Sport Compact, which came out around the same time.
That's epic. Yeah. I love these behind the scene photos because, you and I were kidding around, in text, talking about folks don't realize like we were using film, like you had to buy it, you had to put it in the camera, take the
Yep.
photo, hope it was okay, get it, pay to get it developed. It was kind of a longer process, not like an iPhone today, right? Or Android device. So that makes sense on the because I always thought this cover reminded me. It was neat because they did the Nissan special 40 years of minis. Now there's some of you scratching your head going, well, hold on, October 2000. How are there 40 years of minis? And I've tried to reinforce this to folks. Ernie, rest in peace, wrote about it. They wrote about it in this issue. Mini trucks, believe it or not, when we think old school like 1988 or 1978, old school mini trucking, not in the term that I just said, goes all the way back, believe it or not, to the 50s when you think about the Japan vehicles. But this
Yeah.
cover always reminded me of like the early trucking covers where there was like multiple images around there. So Lance or Mike might have to kind of speak to that. But either way, it's still awesome because you got 4 Nissans on the cover.
Yeah, I think going back to when you um, did OLP and you were talking about this issue, I remember that's how I first like met you. We started
That's
chatting
right.
about it. This actually was supposed to be called like dis like dat, as in
Okay.
Datsun,
That's
because my
right. You
truck
did tell me
technically
that.
my truck was a Datsun. It wasn't a Nissan. So my truck said Datsun by Nissan on it. So or I'm sorry, it said Nissan by Datsun on the back tailgate. The by Datsun was a sticker that came from the factory, and I removed it and I left the Nissan on there. But then I ended up getting a shaved tail. I don't even know what happened to the original tailgate. I ended up getting a shaved tailgate and putting the tag in the back, Frenching it in and stuff. But yeah, I mean I thought that was really cool. But somebody, I think it was might have been the copy editor or something like that, ended up changing it because they didn't like the way it sounded.
Or maybe they just love Dr. Dre like ODB and was like this and like that and like this and no, but yeah, it's crazy little things like that. And to your point, you would have, you had people in those roles back then. I mean, not that there's not now, but print is totally different. But yeah, I mean, you would have people go, hey, well, we're going to change this. We don't want to offend, or this doesn't make as much sense. So whatever happened, it's always neat. But I think for your truck, and people have asked me this, and I've broken down mini truck, and as you know, I've sliced and diced it. I have not sliced and diced this category though. To be in construction zone and then to come back either as a feature and or as a cover, to me is freaking awesome. And I know like you think back to that time and you probably think, wow, man, like what an epic time. Talk to us. Like, I'd love to know what show or what event were you at when it was shot?
So that was funny. It was shot at the exact same place, just in a different part of the campground. So this was at
It wouldn't have been
it was West Coast Nationals.
Yeah, so this is the crazy thing. So earlier when we were texting, I like to look back 10 years, 20, and then 25. Well, literally this weekend, this is crazy. This weekend is the 14th, 15th, 16th was West Coast Nationals 2000. So believe it or not, I don't know how the world works out this way sometimes, Mike, but we're literally talking about this truck feature that was shot 25 years ago this weekend.
I never even thought about it.
Yeah,
It's pretty
it's
wild.
nuts. And when I look at some of the features, a lot of times the same show coverage was in that issue, and you can kind of go, "Oh, they were out here or they were out here." But it's always neat to think like, because to your point, that would have been April, so like you had like a 6 month lead up. Now, do you remember, Mike, when like did you have intel from Mike Self that hey, we're thinking about throwing this thing on the cover, or when they did the photo shoot, was there any indication that hey, we're going to do a special issue?
So I didn't know it was going to be, I didn't know the issue was going to be the way it ended up turning out. I knew that they wanted to shoot my vehicle and they wanted to shoot Dave Slavik's truck, which was on the cover with me,
Yep.
the first Frontier that was bagged.
Yep.
And I knew that the center spread was supposed to, what I had heard was supposed to be the cover. And I don't know why it never did. I can't remember if Lance was the editor at that time or if he wasn't and somebody just didn't like it or what. I can't remember exactly why. But yeah, I knew I had heard it was going to be on the cover. And then when it came out, Mike showed it to me and I was like, whoa, that's so cool. And he handed me the first bound copy. I was like, oh, dude, this is so sick. And then I think so funny is I used to do some freelance work for MiniTruckin,
Yeah, tech article,
Truckin,
show
and
coverage.
street trucks. And I actually covered that show. So, it was a way I was at the shows and, I was like, hey, why don't I, use my, writing skills and, photography skills I always took pictures at shows anyway, so I ended up just doing it and I submitted them for the magazine and they took my photos and some other staff photos I think probably from Lance and Mike and they asked me. Mike says, hey, I think it was Mike, he said, hey, can you write the article? And I did, and actually I want to say it was in Truckin Magazine too, but I couldn't find a copy, so I only have at some point I got rid of a bunch of my mini truckins while I was moving to Texas.
Yeah.
I gave them all to my buddy John. I was like, dude, I can't bring all these boxes of magazines with me. So I just gave them to him and said, here, show them to your boys and just, have fun with them.
Epic.
So, but yeah, I didn't know for sure that it was going to be on the cover, but then later on I found out that it was going to be on the cover and then that they were doing a Datsun Nissan special.
I want to stop real quick and say shout out to our title sponsor, Scraping the Coast. If you've never been, Biloxi every June, scraping with an IN, thecoast.com, June 20th through the 22nd. Want to also give a huge shout out to Robert Simmons. He's been through a lot lately, and I'm wearing his 720 industry shirt, knowing that I was going to have Mike on to talk about the 720. If you in the Alabama area or you're in the kind of the Southeast and you want to get tilt bed or hydraulics or things like that, 720 Industries on Instagram, hit up Robert. He's good people. It's really neat to talk about the truck, and I'm not a historian when it comes to the different OEMs, but people may not realize, most old school mini truckers are, but the 720, and by the way, there's a lot of great pages like 720 era out there and low 720s. The 720s basically, yours was an 83 per the feature, right, Mike? And
83 and a half.
Morphed into the hard bodies because that's right. The Datsun kind of morphed into the Nissan pickup, and then the Nissan pickup morphed into the hard body.
Yeah.
Yeah, just for people to kind of know that.
I like them all. I think the only one I probably wouldn't have, I think when they got to the Frontier, I kind of started losing interest in the, Nissan pickups. That was when I started really moving over to like the Chevys and really starting to like those.
Yeah, good segue, because I wanted to talk about, this is the cool thing about having Mike on, is when we look at features, if we go to Tailgate June 2003, you basically come back and you go, hey, I'm not a one-hit wonder. Not that there's anything wrong with one-hit wonders. I love a lot of one-hit wonder songs, but certainly Mike was not a one-hit wonder with builds. This was cool because I have all the tailgates. I think I'm missing one somehow. They also would have inside the tailgates, they would have like a pull out, and it would have even more content. And believe it or not, I'm pretty certain I do not. So when you sent this, I was kind of intrigued because I do not have this. I think this was an insert that they would do in addition to the regular, I think. because I don't remember ever seeing that one. But your truck, Xtreme Lowz, the GMC, talk to us about it.
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, I bought this truck to basically be a tow vehicle. I was just going to lower it on, I think the first wheels I had for it were some niche bonds. And those were on, so it's funny because, you're in a club, guys kind of rotate wheels around. And so like John got sponsored by Prime Wheel, and he had his 17-inch bonds, and I was like, hey, I'll buy them off you. And so, yeah, I threw them on this thing. And, I think I bought it as a tow vehicle, and I ended up just started doing stuff to it. You know, it helped that, Mike Self was working. I think when I got this, he was just transitioning to street trucks. And so, actually, no, that's wrong. So when he was at MiniTruckin, he needed some tech articles, and he's like, "Hey," he goes, "I need a tech article." Sir Michael's they've got not Sir Michael's, I'm sorry, Starbucks Customs. They've got these new LED third brake lights, and I was like, "Let's do it." So we ended up putting a third brake light in the roof, and then or it had one, but had that big ugly one that slopes
Sure.
over. So we did that. A lot of people just shave it, but it's like, hey, how do you do something cool without breaking the law in air quotes?
Yeah.
And I think I put I think I sent you the feature for that too,
Yeah, right
or
here.
the tech article of it.
Yeah,
But
thanks for
yeah,
doing that.
so that was pretty cool. And then John had done some Cadillac taillights on his, and I was like, Cadillac taillights are sick, right? And I was like, I think a 94 Cadillac taillight would look really good on the back of my truck.
Uh-huh.
So we contact Starbucks. I mean, yeah, Starbucks Customs, and said, hey, would you be interested in doing a tech article on putting in some 94 Cadillac taillights? And he said, sure. So I remember I went down to Cadillac King and I talked to them, and they sponsored me a set of taillights, used taillights off of a wrecked vehicle,
Awesome.
and brought it to Doug over at Starbucks, and they did it. He did a tech on it, and I think he said that was Mike had told me one time that he got relayed to him. That was one of their best tech articles that they ever did. Like they got the most sales from that tech article than any other
Wow.
tech they'd ever done.
That's pretty
So it was
cool.
pretty cool to have that done. And then just, started doing other stuff. I think I was one of the first people to have an Envoy front bumper on there. I know Jay LaRosa, Steve Platt, and myself, like I think there was one other person who did them like right at the beginning, because I did those in 2000, like right when the 2000 Envoy came out.
Sure.
um and like I saw that bumper, I was like, dude, I got to have that. And then I contacted Trends and got a grill for the bumper valance, and I already had the grill in it. So it's funny, when I bought the truck, Travis Nowak, I don't remember if he was working for a magazine at the time. He knew some guys over at DJM, so I gave him some money, and he went to DJM and picked up all the lowering parts for me. So when I first lowered it, I think I just did like a 4.6 drop, and that's when I put the bonds on it. But then, it's one of those things. I had shaved the third brake light to put the LED in there, did the Cadillac taillights, shaved the tailgate, put the roll pan. I'm like, it just snowballed. And it ended up being one of those things where, like, I mean, honestly, like I loved my 720, but the way that the Sonoma rode was light years different. It had more weight to it. It had the V6, it had power. It was an automatic where the 720 was a stick. And it was a totally different vibe. You hit the gas and that sucker moved.
Yeah, it was
And
like a
so
16-year newer, give or take, 15, 16-year newer truck. It just showed how far things had come.
yeah. Yeah, so it was crazy. And then, I bought the tonneau cover for it, and I went back to Gaylord's for that. And I paid for those. I paid for the one on the 720. Prime Wheel was my sponsor for both of those vehicles with the so I had the same wheels, the 122s on both until later. So actually I put a picture. Yeah, so that was at SEMA 2000. And that was funny. Like I didn't even have a spot. I went there and waited in line to try and get a spot
Really?
for SEMA. Yeah, for that first year, like you could actually they you could like petition or something like that if they had open spots. So
Wow.
they wanted to fill up the space. So I had, Prime Wheel and Falcon Tire, they were sponsoring me already. So, I just filled out the paperwork. I think I even paid $500 or something like that for my spot. But, I was like, hey, if I can have my vehicle at, SEMA, if I have to pay for it or not, I'm going to do it.
Yeah, and you
So
had it.
yeah, I don't even think I expected to have it there that year.
Yeah, you
Yeah, and
ended up
then
having it there 3
Global
times.
Accessories product. Yeah, Global Accessories really liked it. I can't remember his last name. There was a guy named Eric, and he did placement for vehicles for SEMA. So he worked for a advertising firm that's all that he did. And I think they were looking for S10 Sonoma specifically. And because they had one year they came out with their bras and their floor mats and, like, hey, I'm not really into bras and,
Sure.
their floor mats. I had custom floor mats made by Stitchcraft. So, I didn't, but I used the Global Accessory ones on a daily basis. So I didn't
Yeah.
have to ruin my really nice suede and leather ones.
That's what I learned from Brandon Burrell. Brandon will get a laugh out of this. He's so OCD. He's got covers for the nice custom cover, right? You got like 2 or 3.
Yeah.
You got to layer them.
Yeah. And then they came out with like a glowing tonneau cover, which I was like, that is the goofiest thing I've ever heard of. But hey, if they want my truck at SEMA and they want to put a glowing tonneau cover with a big tent over the back, have at it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that was super cool. I used to go to SEMA every year because, when I lived in Cali, it was only a 2-hour drive to get to Vegas, and Adam was out there and John was out there. They had moved from LA. So, like, back then it wasn't as difficult to get in either. So, like, I think in 2002, um, I think I went like, I don't know, I think I went under Sport Truck Specialties or something.
Yeah, because I saw that
And
windshield banner.
yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, it's cool. And you just know people and, it's a lot harder to get in now. I haven't been for years. I do want to go back at some point, but, yeah, I mean, that truck was a snowball. I didn't anticipate it was kind of like the 720. I mean, I wanted to have a cool truck, but I never really anticipated it was going to be what it became. And I mean, it's kind of iconic now. Like a lot of people know it. A lot of people, and it's back on the scene again. I think when, Tom Cambria bought it off me, I think that was like, gosh, probably 16 years ago or something, 15 years ago. Uh, he took it to a lot of shows. And then,
Yeah. It was featured on
yep,
SoCalCustoms.com. You reminded me.
yeah. So this one here, I think one of my favorite things on this truck. So that was when it was sponsored by. This is after 2003, I believe, and I had gotten sponsored by Yakuza wheels and Bridgestone tires. And yeah, Brian Frost said, "Hey, I want to shoot your truck." I was like, "Okay, let's do it." But one of the things I really loved, I don't know if you can zoom in, was the bed. Like I had custom made bed mats in the rear. I actually made templates and I sent those. I took them to Revo and said, "Hey, I want some suede and leather bed mats that'll match my floor mats inside my cab, and I want your logo on it." So he made them up. I didn't want to just have an all Linex bed, and because I had a Gaylord cover, it kept the rain out, kept the water out, so they never got wet. So that
Yeah,
was really
and
cool. I
shout out
thought
to
it was a touch
Rebo.
that I had.
Yeah, and shout out to
Yeah.
him because I know with Steve Platt's truck and having him on telling the Hot Wheels story, we've done a
Yep.
couple of collab posts with them, and you couldn't open a magazine back in that era, and especially they're still in business, and not see their name, Stitchcraft.
Yeah. I mean, he's still world famous. I guess I just kind of going back to the bicycle thing. Eddie Fiola, John was at Revo's shop the other day and sent me a video that he took. Eddie Fiola was there with his son, and Revo is going to be doing his son's right hand drive. I think it's a Skyline, so it's kind of cool. I was like, hey, that's Eddie Fiola, isn't it? And it's funny because like I know that John Lotto knows Eddie. I never met him, but I was like, I know that's him because I've seen him before.
Yeah, you're like, I know what that dude looks like. Yeah, it's neat because you had arguably like what many of us refer to kind of as an old school mini truck, an 83 a 720, and then you go to a newer school, arguably MiniTruckin 99, and it showed the diversity. But also that era was so awesome because I was talking to my buddy Randy Frederick, who's been on the podcast many times. Shout out to Randog. We were talking about S and like the third doors, and like that one had it. And to
Yeah.
me, our friend Mark in Florida has one as well. He's been on the podcast. I love when that door is open and like you have that box. I think Jay LaRosa maybe had something similar. I know Steve, which, you know,
Yeah.
that truck is still around, obviously. But it was always cool because you had that third door open and then you've got that box, and, you know, the way you slanted it, it just was like, wow, you can see it. You can obviously hear it. You're sitting in the front. Just a really, really, really clean truck that you built. But I want people to understand this though. Your truck ran on the cover of October 2000, but we were just looking at a tech article from I think November 2000. It seems like, and keep me honest, Mike, you moved on from the 720 pretty quick, right? After it was
Yeah,
on
I
the
mean,
cover.
so I actually, the 720 was at the paint shop for a while. I think it was there for almost a year. And that was at I&J Auto Body in the, like, in the ghetto. Like he did like lowrider paint jobs and stuff like that. And he had painted John's full size a couple times. And so John hooked me up with him, and he's like, yeah, he goes, I'll paint it for you. And so I think I got that paint job. I want to say I paid like $1,200 for that paint job.
Dan, can we bring
And
back
then
those
he did,
prices, Mike?
yeah, I don't think that'll ever happen.
Right.
Can you even buy a can of Krylon for $1,200 now?
I don't think so.
So it's funny, the Sonoma I&J did the paint on that too. Now Ryan Evans did some stuff, like he painted my dash bezel and a couple other things for me, but I&J did, you know, most of all the blending and everything. And like my paint on that thing was flawless, and it's so hard to keep black looking nice. I mean, you constantly. So one of the people that's amazing at keeping black really nice is Travis Nowak.
Uh-huh.
And he's the one who taught me. He's like, dude, don't ever, you know, him and Sal, Sal also with the extra cab long bed Mazda convertible in Vegas, Sal
Yeah,
Napoli.
Napoli. Yep.
He told me too, never ever wipe black in a circle, always straight lines. So that's how, one of the ways that I kind of kept that thing from getting a bunch of swirl marks. And then every time I would wash it, I would wax it and use, you know, Scratch X, and then go over it with like final inspection, so that it was always like the paint was always just really nice. If it got dust on it, I tried not to touch it, you know, wash it off so you're not putting scratch marks in it. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy how I went from the 720, and you know, I was waiting for it, and I was like, oh, I need a tow vehicle, so I bought the Sonoma, and then I lowered it and started doing custom stuff to it. And while the 720 was still getting worked on, and then like that thing started snowballing. So it's weird. Like, I don't recommend doing multiple vehicles at the same time.
I thought you were going to say that.
I guess. Yeah, I got lucky that it worked out. So it was actually supposed to get featured for street trucks also, but I opened my big mouth, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's funny. So I think in there I think I sent you the rendering for the 720, what it was originally going to look like.
Uh-huh. Let's see. Features. It's probably under here, right?
I think it'll say 720 render or something like that. It might not be in the actual folder.
Okay.
So
Right here.
yeah, so that's Mike self drew that. That's what it was supposed to look like. I was actually going to paint my Sonoma like this, because the Nissan would just ended up being orange, and like I decided I wasn't going to change it. So I was going to use this paint scheme on my Sonoma. And I think that Brian McCormick heard that, and he's like, yeah, we'll just wait, and we'll feature it then. Because I was like, I wanted to get it in the magazine all black, and then I was like, oh, I want to have it, you know, featured again.
Then redo it.
I
Yeah.
want to do it, you know, after I do the graphics on it. And then like after that, I just kind of, I was like, I missed my window, and I never ended up doing graphics. I ended up selling it because my ex-wife got pregnant with my oldest daughter, and I needed a family vehicle at that time.
Yeah,
I wanted to make sure my daughter was coming home from the hospital safe.
Yeah, life happens.
Yeah,
I did want to hit upon this real quick. I did want to hit upon this real quick too, because you know, you mentioned this earlier. You were doing show coverage. It's so crazy. Again, West Coast Nats runs October 2000, but it was April of 2000. This weekend, that West Coast Nats AKA, and you can see their
that's
money.
the same show the same show that I think that was a show that I broke the 720 out. and that's the same show that it was shot for the cover.
Yeah, yeah, and it's cool. Our family at Colorado Custom, they were out there, and you could see. And it's so weird because I shared photos from Brian at SoCal Customs. I shared photos today as a reel, and it got a good amount of views, which I don't really care about. But I love that there was a lot of people chiming in, going, "I was there." My friend Sean from Rad BMX Build said, "Hey, I was there." Just
Yeah.
and it's neat because when you think about it, as we get older, time does seem to go faster, right? Because it's like you got the daily grind, the daily routine, this, that, boom, tomorrow's Friday. Okay, another weekend. It's like time, at least in my mind, goes a little bit different. So it's always neat to me. 25 is a great round number. And it's always good to me to look back and go, wow, what was going on 25 years ago? And it was this. And you were shooting the coverage, which was freaking awesome. This Astrovan was
Yeah.
always so sick.
Yeah, it was super fun too. Like, I mean, just walking around the shows and kind of, I wasn't out there telling people I was doing it or anything like
Yeah.
that. But it's funny because back then you have a camera. People are, you shooting for the magazine?
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah. Like, it
maybe.
depends. What are you gonna give me? And then so fast forward a year, well, this was January 2001 issue, but again, just kind of showcasing some of the other stuff that you've contributed to the scene. You got the Look That Kills here, which was, super cool seeing it out there in the show coverage. And then you had also, because that was Summer Madness, and then you had April 2001 coverage here, which I always like to look back at. That was an epic cover shot in Texas, but the show coverage there. And people may tend to forget. My friend Josh Ellis owned the Look That Kills. Now Jeff Gaudette does, but this truck, it's had some changes over the years, and it's just such a badass truck.
Yeah, I think this. So yeah, this one. I think that this was actually covered by me and Mike Finnegan.
Yeah, there you
So
go,
I think
right there. Yep.
I think he had just started at MiniTruckin. Mike Self went to Street Trucks, and Mike Self and I actually drove out in my Sonoma to this show.
Really?
It's funny, yeah, and that it's funny that the picture of that Ranger, that's always been kind of like everybody in my club like makes fun of me because I always take weird angles.
Yeah.
Like, it
I
doesn't
did the
matter
same
what I'm
thing.
shooting. I just it adds more drama to the picture,
Yeah, and
right?
what's funny is if you and I, if we looked at some of my old photos, I took angles like that all the time. And it's weird because, forever we were recording, to jump fast forward, we were recording like, if you had a GoPro, it wasn't in landscape, or it wasn't in portrait. It was in, all
Yeah.
videos were landscape. And it was like, that's kind of still the way YouTube is, unless you're doing YouTube shorts. So it still kind of bugs me out because this popular thing now is all these zoomed in videos. And I think it's a landscape video that they bump in, right, to make it a vertical video. And I do get that. Getting back to the point, I always loved, this angle of taking the camera and turning it a little bit and getting the full view in, showing it body drop.
Yeah, well, because a lot of the times when you're at a show, sometimes they'll stack cars really close,
Sure.
and
Yep.
you don't want to have the vehicle that's next to it necessarily sitting in the photo. So if you angle it, I learned that if you angle it, you can omit certain things and bring your attention to the vehicle that you actually want to shoot instead of it just looking, like, oh, there's just too much going on in the picture.
Yeah. I never
Oh,
talked to
and
anybody about
sometimes
that.
where
But if
you're
you,
standing,
yeah, that's it.
I was gonna say sometimes where you're standing, if you're just standing and you took it and just straight on, you can't even get the whole vehicle. You turn it a little bit of an angle, now you got from all the way from the tailgates, to the front bumper. So I just kind of like, I don't know, it's just one of my signature things that I've done, and like everybody in the club always give me hell about it.
Oh yeah, Sclem, you're spot on with that. It's super cool. We talked a lot about some of the rides and the features and a lot of the contributions that you've had, but I do want to ask you a few other things. Like, what do you think, like when you think about the custom scene now? When I shared my screen earlier, some of you guys may have seen I had pulled up Lance Mountain. And Lance Mountain, he was in this reel on Instagram and it was popping up on my feed constantly. And somebody asked him, what do you wish somebody would have told you about skateboarding back in the day? And he had just an epic response. And he said, I wish that someone would have told me that this wasn't a fad. Everybody kept telling me this wasn't going to last. This is going to be over soon, right? And as a lifelong skateboarder, he goes, I wish I would have known, because I probably would have prepared my body a little bit different. I wouldn't have went so hard in the paint, so to speak. It blows my mind that the mini truck scene, it wasn't a fad for us, right? I mean, granted, life gets in the way and we veer off and we do the priorities, right? I get it. But like, what do you think it's been that the mini truck scene and the truck scene in general has thrived for 30, 40 years?
It's kind of crazy that, I mean, like, I didn't think it would ever go away, right? Because I
Uh-huh.
mean, if you look at it, like, customizing cars has been around forever, and we started doing mini trucks because we couldn't necessarily afford to do, some old,
Hot rod.
Model T, or, like a souped up 66 Nova or something like that. So we started basically building with what we could afford, and back in the day, I think I paid 20. I still remember the guy's name. I bought my 720 from a guy in, uh I want to say it was San Diego. His name was Diego Cervantes. And it's funny because when I bought it, there was a ticket that I guess he had lost. I pulled the seats out to clean the carpet, and there was a ticket down there that he got busted coming across the border with, I think it was like a guava or an avocado or something. I'll never forget the guy. I'll never forget the guy's name. But it's like we were building what we could afford, right? And like, I know that some people say like the whole mini trucking scene has died. It hasn't died, it's just different. I think it has definitely. It's not like it used to be. So like, I remember going to mini nats 2 years ago, completely different experience than going to, a river run. When you go to like West Coast Nationals or Spring Splash, or what was Seductive had,
Endless summer.
Endless Summer. Yeah. Going to those shows, or going to Rezo, or, where you're camping, completely different vibe. One of the things that's funny, when I was thinking about this, I never got hazed, right? So I never got the newbie. I hid when they were doing that stuff.
Yeah.
And so like, so it's funny because like me and John, Corey Sims, Akaika Mahoney, who's R&P, one of our brothers that passed away,
Rest in
and
peace.
Tony Anthony Romero Bones, he also passed away a couple years ago. When we started our first club, Gravitational Effects, like, it was just a bunch of friends. And then, we were all doing the same thing. We were all trying to build what we could afford, and like, we didn't have the cool stuff. And, it just, as we got older, as we, got better jobs and worked, like, we were able to make our vehicles better. And the scene back then, like, we'd go camp out, you'd have like, there were plenty of times, if you look, I think there's a picture in the Street Trucks article that Brandon did a couple years ago. You can see a picture that we used to have this giant balloon, and we had our banner on it. I still have the banner sitting in my garage, and we would light this thing up. We called it the sun, because literally didn't matter where you were, you could stagger your way back to camp. And it's not necessarily like that anymore. So going to mini nats, everybody's, partying and having a good time, but it's on the boulevard. This was like, you're going camp to camp, and if you're at the river, you're going down to the Roadrunner, which is a floating bar that's floating on the river. Well, the bar isn't, but the place where you order drinks is. And so it's just completely different now. And I don't think it's necessarily worse. It's just different. Like,
It's different, yeah.
the caliber of sort of builds now, like, my Nissan was cool, but the caliber of stuff, like, you look at Daryl Poe's truck, you look at Chris Wilson's truck, and I'm just talking about guys in the club, like your truck, holy crap, full off frame,
Thanks, bro.
off restorations, like, insane. My
Crazy.
truck was never that clean. I mean, I had a detailed frame, but it was never like that, you know? I think you
Yeah.
probably have more money into your frame than I have into my entire 720.
Don't remind me. My friend Jimmy has more time and that stuff than I could imagine. And you bring up a very valid point. When people older than we are, the generations before us, when they would say, the world, the America's different or this or that, like, I would sometimes like kind of cringe, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to hear what they're gonna say, right? But if you look back to like the Chevrolet commercials of the late 50s, they had this lady, I think her name was Dinah Shores, and
Kind of
the
shorts.
songs in the 59 Chevrolets, see America in your Chevrolet, and it was like a song and it's a tune, right? And these things, like, I think we're getting to the age, or we're there now, where like we've seen the changes in like, society or the shows and all of that, and we can see it now, right? Our parents told us, hey, one day you're gonna be there, and we're like, whatever, we're going to the party. But it is, I try to like observe, and listen around me, and that's one thing I picked up on. I'm like, things have kind of changed for us. But what's neat is, although the river run, like we've talked about this before in the podcast, when we would look at the magazines, Radar did a whole documentary about it, the West Coast influence. The West Coast was like where it's at. Now I'm not gonna dare say the West Coast is not where it's at, but you and I both know, like you moved to what we call the third coast, right? That was a term for Texas for a long time. But you have guys in NorCal that are driving the mini nats. You have Oregon, you have Washington State driving the mini nats. There were a few guys back in the day doing it from east to west, but to me, like, it really shows that the scene is strong.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, just being at Mini Nats and seeing all the vehicles that were out there, the caliber of them, all the people from different states showing up, people from Texas, I mean, we had guys coming from Washington, like one of our guys in our Washington chapter, he rolled out for the show. He won long distance. That's just crazy. Now,
Yeah,
yeah, he probably drove out because it was our 30th anniversary and,
sure.
all of us were going out for that, but still, that's a huge trek. Like,
Yeah.
I hate making the drive from California to Texas or from Texas back to California. It's horrible.
Yeah, Texas is like their own country. Everybody, Mitch Rawl, who worked at Extensive forever, he used to tell me back in the day, he goes, bro, if you ever drive to SEMA, he's like, Texas is, dude, days, just nothing. And I'm thinking to
Yeah.
myself, luckily now, like Apple and some of these companies and Verizon, they have like satellite to text and stuff. But imagine, like, you're hitting places that have, were true dead zones.
Oh,
Now, I
yeah.
think kids in the future will never know what that is, because now we got
Yeah. I mean, we were
satellite.
doing it with the Thomas guide. I used to carry a Thomas guide in the 720.
Dude, what about Rand McNally? Freaking Atlas, dude. Like Christopher Columbus style. But
Yeah,
this is a
I think
yeah.
the Tom Tom. I remember when that came out, that was the thing. I think, was that somebody talking about it on one of the OLPs, or maybe it was on
I did hear that recently.
Brandon's.
It,
It
it,
might have been on.
I did hear it recently, and what is crazy is I watched this tech thing. I think it was like a shorter segments on Netflix. I think it was technology, and like GPS was like a military thing, right? And I think they said
Yeah.
commercially it rolled out like in 88 or 89, but I mean, obviously we were far from that. But remember the era
Yeah.
when you'd go to Best Buy and there was like the Navi units, or
Yeah.
like you would rent a car, and I know they still kind of go, hey, do you need a toll pass? Do you need a GPS thing? It's like, nah, I got Google Maps, I'm
Got an
good.
iPhone.
Yeah, it's crazy. But this would be a good time to remind people why it's strange. The famous quote, and I know Courtney and others like Clint Walker also wrote under this moniker, but he talks about, we become part of something much more complicated than you or I will ever fully comprehend. We build more than just trucks, we build friendships. And he goes on to say, others laugh at us when we spend hours on end working on our trucks, yet shake our hands when we're done. And like, that always gives me goosebumps, because if you think about the people that told us, hey, this is a fad, this stuff isn't going to last. I mean, you can't go on Instagram and not see somebody posting some 80s and 90s stuff, some music videos. Lately, people are posting a lot of the commercials and stuff. I mean, it truly was. And I think a lot of it has to go, if you really look at it, in the late 70s into the 80s, like, advertising changed where they could advertise to kids. So like Saturday morning cartoons became big. When I would watch G.I. Joe on USA Today, it was like that stuff was marketing to us, and it led to like cool toys and great movies and
Yeah.
stuff. And I'm just thankful I grew up in that era.
Yeah. Yeah. Toys was actually cool. Yeah, I worked for
Yes.
Mattel for a few years. And I met Steve Platt at Sport Truck Specialties, but I really got to know him because we both worked at Mattel together.
Yes, I
I
want
was
to
in
show
IT
this.
and he was working in the design center, and I used to support the design center. I had a bunch of servers and like a big backup unit that sat out there. Yeah, so this was my cube that I just used to go down to the store. We had an employee store, and I would just buy like Hot Wheels all the time. I still have them all too. I got them in bins sitting in my garage. One day
That's
I'll
so
put them
cool.
up in my office. I want
Yeah.
my office to look cool like yours.
Well, here's the crazy
But yeah,
thing. That cubicle, what we used to call office furniture, where I worked for over 2 decades, I had almost the same type of desk there. You had the lights underneath there that sometimes would kill my eyes. I'd turn them off, but
Yeah.
that was like that corporate environment. But there's no cooler corporate environment, in my opinion, like the toy industry, like Mattel. And I'm going to put a link in the description if you guys want to watch like a 15 or 20-minute video to Business Insider. They did this really cool video the other day, and I was telling Mike about it. They talked about like in 2024, I think, like I forget how many billions of dollars. It was something like $4 or $5 billion were made from toy manufacturers that market to adults, right? And it was, and at first you hear that and you're like, well, what crazy adults are buying toys, well, those kind of toys. And you go, well, Hot Wheels. And you go, oh yeah, well, is that really a toy? Yeah, the Redline Club. I mean, you know about that. It's $9.99 a month. Bill from Camp and Drag told me about it, or excuse me, $9.99 a year. And it gets you into that exclusive club. And I mean, dude, epic.
Yeah. It was fun. It was fun building that. I got a bunch of Hot Wheels up there that are like never even went to production.
Wow.
So yeah, there's some of the stuff I think it was around, so I started working at Mattel in 2000. I worked from 2000 to 2007.
Wow.
And in 2000 they had a layoff. And so everybody that got laid off, they went through and cleared out their desks. And me and this other guy, Sergio, we went downstairs. So like we had our server farm was down in the data center on the first floor by the mailroom. And one day we walked down there to go check out, like work on some servers, and there were bins of toys sitting there. And I was like, I went and asked us, like, what's going to happen with all this stuff? They're like, well, we're going to trash it. And so I was like, can I take it to my desk? They said, yeah, you can't take it out of the office, but you can take it up to your desk. So like, okay. So I started hand picking a bunch of the stuff out of there. I had a He-Man. It was number one of, I want to say it was like 1 out of 999 something made, or maybe it's 1 out of 5,000, but it was the number one. And I had it. And later on, so when I quit there, in order to like keep any of your stuff, you had to have a property pass. And I ended up getting a property pass from a VP, and like I listed every single thing that I had and I brought it all out. I've got some stuff that was like, it would have been equivalent to like, Dubs or is that what the
when they started coming out with the die cast? I have one link.
Yeah, with the big wheels, kind of cartoon style. I got some of that stuff, and it's like the box has got graffiti graphics on it. I've got so much quote unquote junk.
And they let you keep it, right, Mike?
Yeah, because I got a property pass for it, and so nobody asked me one way or the other. I had a Hot Wheels track that was signed by Dale Earnhardt Sr. Yeah, I ended up selling it a long time ago. But yeah, I mean, I had a bunch of cool stuff. I still have a bunch of cool stuff. I remember I was talking to you when we were talking earlier about, like I'd go down to the toy store and I'd get stuff, like 50% off. And so I remember one time for Christmas, I bought, like 5 Cadzilla, and it came with, a die cast car about that big, and then it came with a real small normal Hot Wheels size car, and I was giving those away as Christmas presents. So I gave one to Joe Musso, I gave one to John McFarlane. I still have one. I forget who I gave the other ones to, but just
you're like,
it was so cool.
30 cents, 50 cents. I mean, dude, that's the best.
Yeah, it was cool working, and I've got so many Steel Flames. Every time I would go down there, I would buy like every one they had. Because I was getting them for like 50 cents.
Yeah, for those that didn't see, he has one of the rare Hot Wheels. I think it even has the KMC logo on it. Steve Platt's truck, which Don now owns and is a great curator for. Shout out to Diggity Don. But when you think about Steve, he has, when we had him on, just an epic story. Steve Platt, if you guys haven't heard that one, the Hot Wheels truck, the Sonoma, which was the 4th mini truck on the cover of Street Trucks. I always remember that. Him and Jay LaRosa, which I got to get Jay on. We mentioned his name a couple times. He's given me his info. I got to link up with him. But that, that poster is very rare, and some of the stuff that Steve has, I mean, it's really neat. And if the folks are Hot Wheels fans, if you watch the video in the description, there's a guy on that Business Insider video that's like apparently one of the top collectors in the world. Like he shows some of his like one-of-one type, like prototype stuff. Early collectors, as you know, I think they used different paint, but it's so neat, right? Because I got my niece, she's 5 now, I think. I got her into Hot Wheels. That's often the gateway. Now, granted, not every kid that plays with the Hot Wheels becomes a car person. I get it, but many of us do.
Yeah, I still got a couple of my old Hot Wheels from when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I know one of them was a black van. It's funny. It kind of looks like, so there was a Cherokee, and I actually wrote about him. I went back and I reread some of my articles because it's been so long since I've even looked at them. And Nightlight Vans used to throw Summer Madness. I don't know if they still do or not, but Cherokee, he had a black and like orangey colored van. The van was black, but then it had like the carpet was like shag, orange shag, and it was all Indian themed. So it reminds me of his van, and I still have it somewhere. And I've got, a couple other ones. I've never had, surprisingly, I've only ever had one Redline van.
Got it. Yeah,
So
I only
I'm
own.
not a van, a Hot Wheel. A
Yeah, I
guy,
think.
a guy I worked with, he gave it to me, and I've still got it sitting here in my drawer.
Yeah, and because
Keep it
Bill at
separate
Camp and
from everything
Drag
else.
turned me on to the RLC, the Redline Club, I bought into it for $9.99 a year, which I thought was a steal. Of course, you're then going to end up buying for 35 or 40 these custom, but like in the Business Insider video, they talk about like your average Hot Wheels, it only has a couple movable parts. Some of them had the hood open and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But on these, they have way more. Like, so I got the 61 Lincoln, which is freaking awesome, and then I got the Nissan 720 that they put out, which was super cool, which is just awesome. I wanted to make sure we didn't forget this. One of the other things, and I talked about, we talked about a lot of different rides that you've had over the course of time. But what I thought was cool is a lot of us mini truckers, and like Ernie Macias, for instance, rest in peace. He branched off and got into Cadillacs. I got into Lincolns and things like that. But you also built kind of a semi-lifted truck, and I think it was the mall
Yeah, it was my
crawler.
mall crawler.
And that was also a tech article, I think, right?
Yeah, so that was a tech article for ReadyLift,
Okay.
and basically it was installing. So it was a 2-wheel drive, which is why we called it the mall crawler, because what are you going to do besides go to the mall and try and floss, right?
Yeah.
So I actually did drive that thing in the dirt. I've driven it in the sand, and I get stuck, and my brother-in-law had to pull me out. I ended up selling it and then buying my Duramax that still have. I bought it in 2010. So I bought this brand new in 2008. Did the Ready Lift kit on it, and then did the Black Rhino wheels and the Nitto tires. Those were Nitto.
Footers or something.
They're Grappler MTs.
Yep.
And
Remember they were
now
heavily advertising.
yeah, they were really great tires. I really loved the way that it came out and looked, and I did other mods to it too. But yeah, so I mean, I don't ever leave anything that I own stock. Like I'm always monkeying with it, monkeying with stuff. Now I'm building a 70 C10 that it's over at Adam's shop, AMF Garage. And so hopefully that's going to be done. He's also building Brandon Burrell's Blazer right now.
Yeah, shout out to Madrigal, and he's been on the podcast, as you mentioned. I got a chance to meet him a couple times and do the SEMA rollout with Burrell. What's so awesome is like you guys help each other out. Like you said, Brandon is out there building the K5 Blazer, which is super awesome. And you just mentioned, I think it's under random, the C10 right here. Yeah, when was this the one?
Yep, that's it.
Yeah, when you sent this and I got to see this, I go, man, that is a cool photo, because it feels like a lot of guys out in Arizona and the West Coast, they have those brick walls, right? And I was like, dude, you got this truck that's like, I know C10s are super popular, but it's like it's got the huge lip on it. It's white, which is a little bit different. You got the palm tree in the back and the sun shining through. I was like, dude, this was cool, man.
Yeah, so back the last time I was there, I want to say this was August that I was out there. Stayed out without him for I think like 10 days to work on it. And I walked out, and that was like, I looked at it and I go, oh, photo op. Yeah. So I sat there, and of course a little twist to my phone, and it's crazy because I actually took that with my phone, and it's wild that like our phones have much better quality than my camera had way back in the day.
I know, it's mind blowing.
So originally I was shooting with film. I bought I had a Canon EOS 10S. It started, the shutter on it kept sticking, so I bought Courtney had mentioned Finnegan got a new camera, and he's like, hey, he's selling his old one. So I bought that off Finnegan and used that. I think I actually shot Summer Madness with it. And then, I ended up moving up to a digital camera, but I think it was only like I want to say max 12 megapixel.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the phones now are like crazy, way better than that.
Yeah.
So
It's, yeah, especially if
I
you're
don't ever
doing
really,
raw
I don't
and
ever
all
take
that
it out.
stuff.
I
It's,
don't ever take my camera out anymore.
yeah, it's crazy. And if you do, I mean, I know there's some reasons for it, but then you got to transfer the stuff. And luckily a lot of that stuff's become easier, like my GoPro. I used to use when GoPro put out a gimbal. I love the thing. But the reason why I stopped using it is because it's funny, when I worked in the cellular industry for 20 plus years, the company I worked for put out an app called Go 90. And the whole thought process, they were trying to get everybody to go, hey, everybody's using your phone sideways. Remember, like when all the keyboards, you could turn your phone, and we were all like, oh, this is so cool. You could type like this, right? But the company I worked for was trying to go, hey, keep your phone vertical. Let's do these vertical videos, right? And it never really caught on. But then Instagram came out with Reels. I know the TikTok's big and all that stuff. And it's just the world has changed. And like now it's like, hey, I had a gimbal and it was like, I'm doing all these cool things, but it's like, okay, I need vertical, and you just end up just using your phone, which is crazy.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. It's way more convenient
yeah.
too.
Um,
The amount of storage on our phones is like what 10 times what our, little memory card used to be.
Yeah, I have a
It's like,
one. I keep thinking I have a 2 terabyte, but I have a 1 terabyte iPhone, and I never would have thought I would get to that high. And I do have space available, but I also have like where the photos are in the cloud. So there's kind of like
yeah.
if you want to edit it, you click it. It takes a second sometimes to download it because it's like in the cloud. But it's crazy that we can have that much on our phone. But before I ask if there's anything else, because I don't want to take too much more of your time, why don't you give a shout out to your family? I think you have a daughter too. You have one daughter,
I have 2 daughters.
two daughters.
So yes, I have 2 daughters, and my ex-wife has a daughter that I'm pretty close with.
Got it.
So that's Haley, and then my daughters Kayla and Carly.
Cool.
Uh,
Haley,
you know,
Kaylee, Carly?
Haley, Kayla, and Carly.
Haley and Carly. Okay, cool. Yeah, you got to remember those. Do you know all their date of births? No, I'm just kidding. I mean, that
I do.
it gets a little confusing, I'm sure, but that's awesome. Shout out to your fam. What area in Texas, the greater area, do you live in? Like Dallas, Fort Worth, or where are you at?
Yeah, so I'm in North Dallas. So I'm
Got
in
it.
McKinney.
Got it. I've heard of McKinney. And hopefully you're not a Cowboys fan. That's all I'm going to say.
No, you know what's crazy? I'm actually not a huge sports fan.
Yeah, yeah, I
I'm one of
know.
those people, like, I always like getting out and doing something. And then, being that I was into, skateboarding and snowboarding and BMX too, like I do a lot of cycling now. So I do a lot of mountain biking, even though we don't have a lot of mountains. I do go to, Bentonville, Arkansas and do mountain biking there. And I try to pretty much be on my bike as much as possible. I know that, so like back in the day when I was like in the my core mini trucking days, like I think I weighed like 230 pounds. And I
Really?
was like, yeah, it's like, you know what? I can't be unhealthy like that. And, I know that, some of our brothers, that they've passed away because they just live unhealthy. And so like I started cycling and, I ride with a crew that was out of my church in, California in Orange County called Link Cycling. So when I was during my hiatus from Xtreme Lowz, I mean, I never really left the club, but I just didn't have anything that I was really like showing or anything like that. I was just kind of doing my own thing and, with my family. And I was cycling and I would ride every weekend with these guys. And so I still I have a Link Cycling chapter here that I'm, in charge of. And yeah, I mean, we ride pretty much every weekend and just do a lot of mountain biking. So just try to stay healthy, and that's one of the things I can't stress enough. We want to be here, see the younger generation building, cool vehicles and trucks and stuff like that. If, we're not taking care of ourselves, I don't think we'll ever be able to, we might not be able to stick around long enough to see that. So I want to be here for my kids and, you know, for my friends and family and stuff. So
Yeah, well said. And I want to give a shout out to D'Angelo Land. I call him the OG DG. Well, triple OG DG. You probably know D'Angelo Land's name from Southern California, but Brian Gendro dropped his Tacoma back in the day, and Brant ended up, acquiring it. But Dan has given me a lot of good feedback. Yo, Jay, I know you're, not quite my exact age, but make sure you're getting checked out and stuff. And I think that's important because the preventive stuff that you can do, I know sometimes it's a little worrisome. It's even like right now is tax season, right? And some of us are like, man, like, what's going to happen with, this and that. But it's like your health is there's nothing more important. You could argue, religion, your family and your health. But if you don't have your health, it's like you can't maybe go to church or do your thing, or you can't support your family or be there for them. So I highly encourage people. I'm not going to name everybody right now, but there's a bunch of people that I've seen on social media that have lost weight. I know even Chuck Dog in Florida, he's lost, I think, 50 pounds, he said, since the beginning of the year. So I encourage people, do what makes you happy. There's going to be some people out there that are going to beat the odds, like my dad's dad that freaking smoked to the day he died, and this and
Yeah.
that, and he was 80 years old or whatever. George Burns type people. But listen, those are the exception, not the rule, in my opinion.
Yeah, my dad just passed away last year at 84.
Sorry,
So
man.
yeah, it's all good. He's in a better place. But yeah, he didn't take care of himself, but he lived a long life. But I just, I saw him, he was pretty sedentary, and I was just like, I don't want to be like that. So I always try this one thing. If you know me, I don't ever sit still.
Yeah,
I'm surprised I've sat still this long.
I can't believe we sat still for this whole podcast, because you and I, yeah, we're like, we call our friend, I won't say his name, but he's a guy, he's a little older than I am, but we call him Squirrel, because he's like, he's like, oh, wait, I can't stay still for a while. But I do think that is ultra important. And I think when people, even if you're like, I don't care, I'm going to live wild and I'm going to live like a freaking lunatic, hey, that's your choice. But I've also, like, a reason why I stopped drinking now, almost 2.5 years ago. It wasn't that I think like people are animals that drink, and whatnot. Like, we've all done crazy stuff at truck shows and stuff. But I kind of looked at it and said, man, if I stop drinking now and I'm 45 years old, how was I going to improve? Like, when I'm 70 or 75, And years ago on Twitter, Michael Buffer, the Let's Get Ready to Rumble guy, right?
Yeah.
He had mentioned, I think I was following him, and he said something like, I'm 77 years old. And he was talking about how he eats pretty clean, he works out and things like that. And I was like, I'm not going to be Michael Buffer, but at the same time, if I can control what I can control now, how is that going to benefit me in 10, 20, 30 years? So,
Yeah. I mean, I just turned 54 a couple days ago, and I'm probably in the best shape I've been in since I was in college.
well, you go, Sclem, Sklem. In my mind, I'm trying to make sure I say it right.
Yeah.
No, that's
Yeah.
awesome. Listen, I know we could probably keep going. We touched upon pretty much everything that I had thought, but I know, you probably have some thoughts in your head. Like, is there any other like gaps or anything you wanted to fill in before we kind of wrap it up, Mike? Any shout outs or anything you want to give?
No, just yeah, I guess just I've just a shout out to all my Xtreme Lowz family. Shout out to Marley, who just recently, his wife just passed away in a car accident. So
Oh my God.
my thoughts are with him. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to make it back to San Diego for the funeral or for the celebration of life. But it just shows how short life is, and it sucks. Like, it just seems like the older that we get, the more friends we're losing. So it sucks.
Yeah, and I encourage people, like, I was thinking about this earlier, just on an off topic, like, do what makes you happy. I try to tell people that. Like, granted, you can't just be like, oh, well, I'm going to quit my job, and we have priorities, right? We take care of our families, but, like, if your dream is to go to SEMA, like, make it happen. Like, it's not as hard as you think. Look up a plane ticket, buy it in advance. Money might be tight. You can, to me, if you focus on what you want to do, whether it's becoming a photographer or going to a show or flying overseas and visiting somewhere, you can make it happen.
Yeah.
We don't need Marty's dad to tell us, George, if you put your mind to it, you can accomplish anything. But it does resonate still with me.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like, what you said is 100% true. If you put your mind to something, you can do it. Like, I never set out to have a truck on the cover of MiniTruckin. I never had set out to have a Truckin tailgate. I never set out to, build. I mean, I set out to build something cool, but never anything that was, worth being in a magazine. And it's like, even doing freelance work for the magazines, honestly, like, even when it comes to taking photos, I don't know all the f-stops and this and that.
Yeah.
And, I kind of muddled my way through it.
Yeah.
Someone told me, fake it till you make it. And, if you want to do something bad enough, you'll figure out a way to do it,
Correct.
and just make sure that you do it legit, though.
Yeah,
Because you don't want to
exactly. And your
you don't want to get
attitude-
caught doing something wrong and then you're in jail or something like that.
Right, exactly. We're not. Yeah, like we always like to say, we keep it legal here, as the Ollie G would say. Yeah, and that's important too, because you made a point, and I'm trying to remember what I was going to say. But when you focus on a goal, or you set a goal and you try to do it the legit way, that's the key. And I think when people realize that, like, the whole fake it till you make it, like, a lot of times it's your attitude. And there used to be a saying or a shirt that said attitude, or maybe it was when I was in collapsed altitude, it was like attitude affects altitude, or something like that. But the whole point is, like, hey, your attitude. And that's what I try to tell my son. I was like, look, you can have a pissed off customer, but if you're kind about it, and you say, hey, I'm trying to do this and that, and someone knows that you're working to try to do something, they're gonna ratchet themselves down, and they're gonna give you the opportunity to fix it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, like, life could have been different for me. I've been in IT since, 98 officially. And I mean, being able to work for the magazines and, for doing freelance, and like, I even, Gil Luna, he wanted me to work for Tailgate. And, it's just one of those things. I was making more money in IT. I knew that I couldn't really make any money
Sure.
working for a magazine,
Yeah.
but I had a blast doing it. And I look, because I didn't do it, look where Kevin Aguilar is. He got the job that Gil wanted me to take. And I was like, no, dude, here, I know this kid. I had met Kevin. I was like, dude, he's an awesome photographer. He's your man. So he met him and started working for the magazine. I could have had a totally different life, but do what you want. You do what you love. I loved computers, and that's what I decided to do. I mean, but I still kept doing, the MiniTruckin thing, and it was fun. And I have some great memories, and I've met some amazing people along the way. So if you want to do something, put your mind to it and do it. You may take a different road like I did. I got into IT, and so that, got me into like doing websites and all this other stuff, so that I started meeting people in the industry. And then, I got interested in photography, and, just everything kind of snowballed. But you don't have to necessarily take a traditional way. You don't have to go into like, getting a degree in, uh, you know, media or something like that to work for, a online publication or a print publication or something like that. There are ways to get into it, I'm not saying
Networking.
I was great at it, but, I think I did okay. My articles seem to be okay. So my
Yep.
photography was decent enough to make it in the magazine. So, hey,
Yeah, and you left your mark, and I appreciate you kind of giving some of the insight and the intel on your cover. To me, it's an awesome truck. I know it was eventually sold. I think Tom Jenkins had it for a minute too.
yeah, so I sold it to Tom Cambria. He sold it to Tom Jenkins, and then Brian Heff bought it for his son, and he's here in Dallas.
In Texas,
So,
yeah.
and it's been out there, like it's been getting a bunch of coverage.
Yeah. So
So
yeah, and what's cool is, the world is a small place, right? We always say, and it's like, boom, now it's back around where you're at. So it's going to be neat to see, that video and or photos when you reunite with it, so to speak. I was talking about Dan Gilliland, quick story, a guy John that I met from Aftermath. He had his old Toyota Extra Cab. And
yeah,
Dan had texted me recently and said, yeah, John had sold my truck. And we saw it at Lone Star. It pulled in a top 10 mini truck award, which is amazing,
nice.
right? I mean, these trucks that are 15, 20 plus years old, still showing like Josh Freeman's truck, at Lone Star. So it's really cool to see that. But, it's been a pleasure meeting you, having Xtreme Lowz on, trying to show some of you guys some love, because, you guys been around a long time, and, just keep doing what you do. Shout out to your fam. And it's so awesome talking pop culture and so much more. Again, I mean, we could make this a 4-hour episode, but
Yeah,
for sake of, me having to take a break, I'm going to go ahead and say, hey, man, it's been a pleasure, dude. It really has. And I'm not going to pronounce your last name because I'll probably mess it up, but Sclem. Sclem?
yep,
Sclem. It's been awesome, dude. I'm so glad I got to meet
yeah. I really appreciate it. I appreciate the love that you're showing the community, and the just having your podcast available, just being able to, like, since I don't have all the magazines
you.
anymore,
Sure.
I've only kept certain ones. Just being able to, go through the OLP on
Me too.
YouTube and see the different issues where you go through and talk about it. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that truck. It's super cool. Like,
Yeah. And
there's so
guys like
much
you,
history.
yeah, and guys like you, when you chime in, I messaged Zach the other day because I was doing that issue, and I said, hey, I didn't know what wheels. I mean, like, one of the three trucks wasn't really, they weren't featured, but they were on the cover. It was a shop. So, like, I'm filling in the blanks still, believe it or not, but I want to go back and slice and dice stuff with things such as, like, with your truck, it was construction zone, then boom, a feature slash on the cover, which is just insane. But yeah, brother, I appreciate the good word. Again, shout out to your fam and Xtreme Lowz worldwide. I know you guys are still, always doing it big. I don't know if I'm doing it backwards or whatever, but XL, I always use that hashtag. I used to use like Xtreme for Life, but I think the main one I
Yeah,
use is
XL
Xtreme
for
Lowz.
life.
Yeah, there's XL for Life. Yeah, number 4, I think.
Yeah, I used to, and I still live by that. I know I heard you in a recent podcast about, for life, but
No,
I
I know, and I was just kind of joking about that. But I like when there's a hashtag. You guys know this. If it's a truck club, or I use, for Time Machine, it's Time Machine Mini Truck. People probably think, well, why? Well, I can curate that stuff together.
yeah,
Down the road, someone can tap on that hashtag, and you're like, boom, there's Xtreme Lowz.
yeah. I mean, like I think like I even used to have that as my in my email signature because I used to have, Mike at extremelowz.com
Yeah,
because I was the webmaster
yeah,
for the site until RJ took it over at iCandy, and like area XL for life. And yeah, I mean, I couldn't imagine being in another club.
yeah.
Like
I
it's,
know.
it's like this is my family.
I've been
But
encovered for so long. Yeah.
it's not saying I don't have friends in other clubs. I do, but it's just the club that I've always been in, and it's got so much history for me that I don't think I could ever go anywhere else.
Yeah, you know it. Well, thank you so much, brother. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Much respect.
All right. Peace.